What if everything you thought you knew about ancient history was missing some of its most extraordinary chapters? For centuries, whispers have lingered in the corners of myth and legend stories of technologies so advanced, so far ahead of their time, that modern science still struggles to explain them. These aren't just tales told around campfires or written as simple folklore. They are echoes of something deeper, something real, something that hints at a sophistication our history books have yet to fully acknowledge. From the unquenchable flames of Greek fire that burned even on water to the celestial calculators of the Antikythera Mechanism, from the flying chariots described in ancient Indian epics to the divine energy sources said to have powered the lost city of Atlantis, these stories have captivated dreamers, scholars, and explorers for generations. They live in that fascinating space between imagination and evidence, teasing us with the possibility that our ancestors achieved far more than we've given them credit for. Today, we begin an epic journey into the heart of these mysteries. Together, we'll explore 31 legendary technologies, each preserved only in fragments of story, art, and memory, and the real, tangible artifacts that might just hold the key to proving they were more than myth. This isn't just about satisfying curiosity. It's about reimagining our past, recognizing the boundless potential of human innovation, and uncovering truths that could reshape not only history, but our vision of what's possible in the future. So settle in, open your mind, and join me as we step into the shadows of time to uncover technologies lost to legend, waiting to be found. Think about the last time you heard a story that seemed too incredible to be true, a tale passed down through generations, maybe from a grandparent or an old book that captured your imagination and made you wonder, what if? Now picture that feeling multiplied across centuries and entire civilizations. That's precisely the power and allure of legendary technologies. These narratives didn't just appear out of thin air. They were woven into the very fabric of societies, often born from a deep human need to explain the unexplainable, to aspire to greater heights, and to preserve cultural identity. In ancient Greece, for example, the god Hephaestus wasn't just a divine blacksmith. Stories describe him crafting autonomous golden servants, mechanical tripods that moved on their own, and even Tolos, a giant bronze automaton guardian. These weren't mere fantasies. They were a way for people to conceptualize a future where technology could mimic life itself, reflecting their values around craftsmanship, power, and divine intervention. Similarly, in ancient India, the epic Mahabharata doesn't just tell stories of heroes and gods. It describes Vimanas, detailed flying chariots with intricate engineering, capable of incredible speed and maneuverability. These accounts likely served multiple purposes, showcasing spiritual advancement, illustrating cosmic power, and perhaps even recording misunderstood natural phenomena or early technological experiments. What's fascinating is how these legends vary across cultures yet share common themes. The Norse had their own mystical artifacts, like Thor's hammer Mjolnir, which wasn't just a weapon but a symbol of divine power with the ability to level mountains and always return to its wielder, a metaphor for unstoppable force and loyalty. In China, legends speak of intricate mechanical devices and automatons crafted by master engineers, often used to entertain emperors or defend kingdoms, highlighting a societal reverence for ingenuity and precision. These stories did more than just entertain. They often functioned as teaching tools, moral compasses, or even political propaganda. A tale about a powerful technological artifact could inspire awe and obedience, suggest the divine right of a ruler, or warn against the dangers of overreach and hubris. They also reveal universal human desires, the wish to conquer the skies, the dream of eternal life, the need for protection, and the curiosity about what lies beyond our immediate perception. By examining the historical context, the wars, the spiritual beliefs, the resource availability, and the scientific understanding of the time, we start to see these legends not as mere myths but as reflections of real hopes, fears, and innovations. They are cultural echoes, preserving the voice of an era long gone but not forgotten, and they challenge us to look deeper because sometimes the most fantastic stories are grounded in a truth waiting to be rediscovered. But how do we move from these captivating stories to something more concrete? How do we separate poetic imagination from historical fact? This is where the meticulous science of archaeology enters the stage, acting as our most reliable bridge across the chasm of time. Think of it as a form of detective work on a grand scale, where every shard of pottery, every layer of sediment, and every chemical signature is a potential clue. For generations, many of these legendary technologies were dismissed as pure fantasy, the products of overactive ancient imaginations. But then the digs began. In the sands of Iraq, a most peculiar object was unearthed near Baghdad in the 1930s. It was a simple clay jar, but inside was a copper cylinder housing an iron rod, all showing signs of corrosion from an acidic substance like vinegar or wine. To the astonishment of many when replicated, this so-called Baghdad battery produced a small electrical charge. Suddenly, a legend about ancient knowledge of energy didn't seem so far-fetched. It forced a dramatic reconsideration of what pre-modern societies might have understood about electrochemistry, perhaps using it for electroplating metals or even in religious rituals to create a sense of divine wonder. This is just one example of how a physical artifact can breathe new life into a dismissed myth. The tools of modern archaeology have become incredibly sophisticated, allowing us to interrogate these finds with a precision our predecessors could only dream of. Radiocarbon dating lets us pin down the age of organic materials with remarkable accuracy, while spectroscopic analysis can identify the elemental composition of an ancient metal alloy, tracing its origin to a specific mine halfway across the world. Three-dimensional laser scanning can create perfect digital replicas of fragile artifacts, like the intricate gears of the Antikythera Mechanism, allowing researchers across the globe to collaborate on solving its mysteries without ever touching the original. This device, recovered from a 2,000-year-old shipwreck, is a stunning testament to this process. For decades, its calcified lumps were a curiosity, but advanced imaging technology revealed it to be an astonishingly complex analog computer, capable of predicting planetary movements and eclipses. It was a legend-made solid bronze, proof positive that the ancient Greeks had achieved a level of mechanical sophistication that history had entirely forgotten. What these discoveries champion is a truly multidisciplinary approach. The lone historian poring over texts is now joined by the materials scientist, the astronomer, the engineer, and the geologist. By blending the clues from folklore with the hard data from the soil, we can start to piece together a much richer, more complex tapestry of human innovation. It's not about proving that every myth is literally true, but about understanding the kernel of truth that inspired it. Perhaps a tale about a fearsome dragon was born from the discovery of gigantic dinosaur bones. Maybe a story about a magical, ever-burning lamp originated from the observation of natural phosphorescent gases or cleverly engineered oil reservoirs. Archaeology doesn't just validate myths, it often provides the rational, scientific explanations for the phenomena that ancient people could only describe in magical or divine terms. It reshapes our understanding not by simply confirming old stories, but by revealing the incredible, and very real ingenuity that those stories were trying to convey all along. Of all the legendary weapons lost to time, few inspire as much awe and terror as Greek fire. Picture this: you are a sailor on an enemy ship in the 7th century, facing the mighty Byzantine navy. Without warning, a torrent of liquid fire erupts from a strange tube on their vessel, arcing across the water. It hits your deck and instantly erupts into a blazing inferno. Panic sets in as you realize this is no ordinary flame. You throw water on it, but that only makes it burn fiercer, spreading the unstoppable conflagration across the wooden planks. This was the horrifying reality for the foes of the Byzantine Empire, a technological marvel so potent it secured naval dominance for centuries, and whose secrets died with the civilization that wielded it. The most detailed accounts come from historians like Anna Komnene, a Byzantine princess who chronicled its use in the 12th century. She described it as a liquid flame that was projected through tubes, a substance that clung to everything it touched and defied all attempts to extinguish it, especially with water. The invention is widely attributed to an engineer named Callinicus of Heliopolis, who fled to Constantinople and presented his terrifying creation to the emperor, just in time to help repel a devastating Arab siege. For generations, this weapon was the ultimate naval advantage, a closely guarded state secret that protected the empire from countless invasions. Its formula was known only to a select few, possibly even just one family, and it was so valuable that emperors personally controlled its deployment. The secret died with the fall of Constantinople in 1453, leaving behind only terrifying descriptions and a mystery that has tantalized chemists and historians ever since. So what physical evidence might we have of this legendary substance? Archaeologists have unearthed intriguing artifacts that could be the very tools of this ancient terror. From shipwrecks in the Mediterranean, they have recovered thick ceramic grenades, their interiors stained with residues of petroleum-based compounds. More compelling still are unique bronze siphon nozzles, some featuring complex internal mechanisms that match contemporary illustrations of the devices used to project the fire. These nozzles were often mounted on the prows of Byzantine warships, sculpted to look like the heads of monstrous lions or other beasts, making the jet of fire appear as a terrifying breath weapon. While the liquid itself, being perishable, has never been found, these artifacts strongly suggest the legends were built upon a very real and sophisticated delivery system for a terrifying incendiary weapon. For decades, modern scientists have tried to reverse engineer the formula based on the historical descriptions. The most widely accepted theory points to a crude petroleum distillate, like naphtha, which is naturally flammable and floats on water. To this, they likely added other chemicals to create its infamous properties. Quicklime, for instance, heats up violently when it contacts water, which could have helped ignite the mixture upon impact. Other proposed ingredients include sulfur to create toxic fumes, pine resin to make it sticky and cling to surfaces, or even saltpeter to introduce an early form of gunpowder-like combustion. Yet, no modern reconstruction has perfectly matched the legendary accounts of a substance that was instantly ignited, impossible to put out, and could be projected over a significant distance. The true formula likely involved a precise combination of ingredients and a specialized pumping mechanism that remains just beyond our grasp. The enduring enigma of Greek fire is a powerful lesson in how technology can be lost. This was not a forgotten idea but a deliberately erased one, a casualty of extreme secrecy and eventual societal collapse. It forces us to consider what other advanced innovations from the ancient world might have vanished simply because the knowledge was too concentrated, too protected, or lost in the chaos of a fallen empire. This single, fiery legend opens a window into a world where chemical engineering was far more advanced than we once believed. A world where the line between myth and military technology was terrifyingly thin. Now, from the terrifying spectacle of unstoppable flames that defied the very sea, we journey to a legend that takes to the skies the enigmatic Vimanas of ancient India. These are not the simple chariots of war we often picture from antiquity. The descriptions found in sacred texts like the Mahabharata and the Ramayana depict something far more extraordinary. They are detailed as magnificent flying palaces and sleek aerial vehicles, capable of astonishing speeds, hovering silently, and executing complex maneuvers that seem to defy the basic physics of their era. The texts don't just say they flew, they provide intricate details that fascinate engineers and historians alike. Some accounts describe them as being powered by mercury vortex engines or propelled by the rhythmic chanting of specific mantras, suggesting a technology that harmoniously blended advanced mechanical principles with a deep, perhaps yet unknown, understanding of energy and vibration. They were said to be constructed from exotic, lightweight metals that could withstand immense heat and force, and were often equipped with weapons of devastating power, rivaling the descriptions of modern aerial warfare. This isn't a vague myth of wings, it is a detailed, technical account of aviation that feels eerily anachronistic. So, do we have any physical evidence that could ground these soaring legends in reality? While no complete Vimana has been discovered in a hidden hangar, there are compelling artifacts that some researchers point to as potential pieces of the puzzle. Intricate temple carvings across India, such as those at the centuries-old shrines of Shravanabelagola, depict flying vehicles with elaborate designs, domes, and what appear to be propulsion mechanisms, offering a visual record that aligns with the textual descriptions. Ancient manuscripts, including the Vaimanika Shastra, which claims to be an early 20th century translation of much older knowledge, delve into detailed schematics for these machines, discussing everything from their ideal construction materials to their guidance systems. Furthermore, unusual archaeological finds prompt fascinating questions. The famous Delhi iron pillar, standing over 23 feet tall and weighing more than 6 tons, has baffled scientists for centuries due to its incredible resistance to rust despite being over 1,600 years old. This masterful feat of metallurgy, creating a protective passive layer on the iron, hints at a sophisticated knowledge of materials science that could theoretically support the construction of advanced machinery. Could such an artifact be a surviving component of a larger, more complex technological culture that also conceived of flying vehicles? This leads us directly into the heated debate among scholars. Are these stories purely symbolic mythology, or could they be distorted memories of real technological achievements? The mainstream academic view often interprets the Vimana accounts as rich metaphors for spiritual ascent, divine power, or the soaring human imagination. They were powerful narrative devices used to illustrate the majesty of the gods and the epic scale of the conflicts between good and evil. However, another perspective, often labeled the ancient astronaut theory, proposes that these detailed descriptions could be evidence of extraterrestrial visitations, with the Vimanas representing advanced spacecraft that ancient peoples could only understand and describe in the religious and cultural terms available to them. A third, and perhaps most intriguing, viewpoint sits between these two extremes. It suggests that the legends may be based on genuine, albeit more primitive, human innovations in gliding, ballooning, or early aeronautics that were witnessed by few, and thus became exaggerated into myth over countless retellings. This theory posits that ancient innovators might have been experimenting with concepts of flight using materials like bamboo, silk, and carefully controlled fires, achievements that, while not supersonic jets, would have been utterly miraculous to the people of the time and worthy of being recorded as divine chariots. The enduring power of the Vimana legends ultimately challenges us to expand our perception of ancient ingenuity. They force us to ask uncomfortable questions about the linear progression of technology and whether our current historical timeline might have gaps where entire schools of knowledge were lost to war, natural disaster, or simply the slow erosion of time. These stories push us to reconsider what is possible, reminding us that the human drive to conquer the sky is an ancient and universal dream. Whether as metaphor, memory, or something in between, the Vimanas represent a breathtaking vision of possibility that continues to inspire and mystify. And this fascination with precise, mechanical movement in the ancient world finds its most stunning and undeniable expression not in the skies of India, but at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, with the discovery of a device so complex it was centuries ahead of its time. And so we arrive at a discovery so profound, so utterly out of place in the historical timeline, that it single-handedly forces us to rewrite our understanding of ancient science. This isn't a legend waiting to be proven. It is the artifact itself, a ghost in the machine that has emerged from the depths to challenge everything. In the year 1901, sponge divers off the coast of the tiny Greek island of Antikythera were forced to take shelter from a storm. When they dove the next day, they stumbled upon the wreck of a Roman cargo ship, its hull filled with marble statues, glassware, and ceramics, a treasure trove from the 1st century BC. Among these classical antiquities, they recovered a lump of corroded bronze and wood that seemed unremarkable at first. It was set aside, a curiosity that would sit in a museum storage room for nearly half a century before anyone realized its true significance. That corroded lump, we now know, was the Antikythera Mechanism, an ancient Greek analog computer of such staggering complexity that its existence feels almost impossible. The device itself, dating to around 100 BC, is a breathtakingly intricate clockwork of at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, precisely machined and mounted within a wooden frame about the size of a large shoebox. On its front and back were dials with pointers, surrounded by carefully inscribed Greek text that served as a user's manual. This was not a toy or a simple ornament. It was a sophisticated scientific instrument, a mechanical cosmos designed to model the heavens. By turning a hand crank on its side, the user could advance the mechanism forward or backward in time, and as the gears turned, the pointers would move across the dials, predicting the positions of the sun, the moon, and likely the 5 known planets with astonishing accuracy. It could forecast lunar and solar eclipses, not just the date, but the exact hour and even the color and direction they would appear in the sky, information deeply tied to ancient omens and religious practices. One of its most beautiful functions was a tiny, rotating bronze ball, half silvered and half black, that spun to show the exact phase of the moon on any given date. This was a planetarium, an eclipse predictor, and a sophisticated calendar, all contained within a single, portable device. For decades, the mechanism's true complexity remained hidden beneath layers of centuries-old calcification. The real breakthroughs began when researchers started using advanced imaging technologies. In the early 2000s, high-resolution X-ray tomography and 3-dimensional surface mapping finally allowed scientists to peer inside the crusted fragments and read the faint inscriptions worn away by time. They could see the precise tooth counts on the gears, some with as many as 223 teeth, cut with a precision that would be impressive even with modern tools. The inscriptions revealed a detailed astronomical glossary, explaining what the dials showed and even referencing the cycles of ancient games like the Olympics. These scans revealed a device far more advanced than anyone had dared to imagine, incorporating complex gear trains that mathematically modeled the irregular orbits of celestial bodies. For instance, the moon's path is not a perfect circle. It speeds up and slows down. The mechanism's creator accounted for this with a brilliant pin and slot device that varied the moon's motion, a sophisticated application of differential gearing that would not be seen again until the 18th century. The existence of the Antikythera mechanism shatters the conventional narrative of technological progress. It was not an isolated miracle. A device of this sophistication does not simply appear. It implies a long, lost tradition of fine mechanics and scientific instrumentation. The Greek philosopher Cicero wrote about similar devices, describing a planetarium built by Archimedes that replicated the movements of the heavens. The Antikythera mechanism proves that such accounts were not mere boasts or legends, but reports of a real technological capability. It suggests a thriving workshop tradition in the Hellenistic world, where brilliant minds applied complex mathematical theories to create working models of the universe. This one surviving device is likely just a single example of a whole class of scientific tools that were lost when the classical world collapsed, their knowledge scattered and forgotten for over a millennium. It stands as a powerful, silent testament to a road not taken, a level of mechanical genius that was lost to the Dark Ages and had to be painfully rediscovered centuries later. It forces us to wonder what other marvels, now only whispered about in legend, might have once been just as real. And from this pinnacle of precise, rational mechanics, we now turn to a technology that represents its exact opposite, a substance shrouded in the cryptic symbols and spiritual yearning of alchemy. If the Antikythera mechanism represents the zenith of ancient rational engineering, a clockwork model of a knowable universe, then the legendary Philosopher's Stone represents its spiritual counterpart, a pursuit not of prediction but of perfection. This was not a machine to be built, but a substance to be discovered or concocted, a holy grail for the mind and soul that captivated some of history's greatest intellects for over a millennium. The core promise was twofold, and both aspects were equally intoxicating. First, the power of transmutation, the ability to turn base, worthless metals like lead into pure, everlasting gold, a symbol of ultimate value and purity. Second, and perhaps even more compelling, was the promise of the Elixir of Life, a potion derived from the stone that could grant the drinker immortality, healing all ailments and halting the decay of age. This concept was astonishingly universal. In medieval Europe, it was the lapis philosophorum, sought by figures like the legendary Nicholas Flamel, a scribe whose purported success in creating the stone turned him into an icon of alchemical achievement. But the idea echoes far earlier and farther east. In ancient China, Taoist alchemists sought the Wadon or external elixir, experimenting with cinnabar and mercury in their quest for physical immortality for the emperor, while in India, the traditions of Rasayana aimed to purify the body and metals alike. This was not a fringe idea. It was a central pillar of pre-scientific inquiry, a deep and abiding human desire to conquer the two most fundamental limitations of our existence, poverty and death. The physical evidence we have for this pursuit is not a singular, glowing stone, but a fascinating trail of intellectual and material breadcrumbs. The most compelling artifacts are the thousands of alchemical manuscripts that survive, filled with intricate, symbolic illustrations and cryptic recipes. These texts, like the Ripley Scroll or the works of Paracelsus, were often written in a coded language to protect their secrets from the unworthy, describing processes like the magnum opus or great work, which involved a series of color changes: black, white, yellow, and finally red, signifying the stone's creation. Beyond the texts, we have the actual tools of the trade, beautifully crafted alembics, crucibles, and distillation apparatus made from glass and ceramic, discovered in old laboratories. These were not the tools of mere mystics, they were the forerunners of modern chemical equipment. Furthermore, there are intriguing physical compounds that some point to as potential candidates. A red powder known as projection powder appears in many accounts, said to be the active ingredient for transmutation. Some modern analyzers of ancient artifacts have even found traces of unusual alloys or purities that, while not proving alchemical success, hint at sophisticated and perhaps secretive metallurgical techniques that could have been mistaken for magic by observers. From our modern scientific vantage point, the literal existence of a stone that can create gold and immortality seems impossible, a violation of fundamental laws of chemistry and physics. However, science offers compelling metaphorical interpretations that reveal the profound intuition of the alchemists. The transmutation of base metals into gold is now a reality, though not through chemistry but through physics, specifically nuclear transmutation. In a particle accelerator or a nuclear reactor, it is indeed possible to change one element into another by altering the number of protons in its nucleus, though the energy and cost required to create a single atom of gold from lead is astronomically impractical. In this light, the alchemist's dream was a prescient, if misunderstood, glimpse into the nature of matter itself. Similarly, the quest for the elixir of life can be seen as a metaphorical forerunner to modern biotechnology and medical science. Our relentless search for gene therapies, advanced pharmaceuticals, and understanding of cellular aging is, in its essence, a continued pursuit of longevity and vitality, a scientific echo of that ancient spiritual desire to conquer mortality. Ultimately, the true power and enduring legacy of the Philosopher's Stone lies not in its physical reality, but in its profound symbolism. It represents the ultimate human drive for transformation, not just of lead into gold, but of the ignorant self into the enlightened self, the mortal into the divine. The long, arduous process of creating the stone was often described as a parallel to the alchemist's own spiritual purification, a journey of introspection and refinement. In this way, the stone was a powerful ideological technology, a concept that drove centuries of experimentation, which in turn laid the groundwork for modern chemistry, medicine, and metallurgy. Their methods were shrouded in mystery, and their primary goal was never achieved, but in their desperate search for a mythical substance, the alchemists invented distillation, discovered new elements and acids, and developed the laboratory practices that would later fuel the scientific revolution. The stone reminds us that the line between science and spirituality was once beautifully blurred, and that our deepest desires can be the very engine of discovery, even if the original dream remains just out of reach. This pursuit of a perfect, transformative substance finds a powerful parallel in another legendary object, one not designed by human hands but said to be divinely created, shifting our focus from the philosophical to the biblical. This seamless blend of divine power and potential technology brings us to one of history's most enduring and electrifying mysteries, the Ark of the Covenant. Described in the Book of Exodus as a sacred chest crafted from acacia wood and overlaid with pure gold, it was far more than a mere reliquary. It was the ultimate symbol of God's presence among the Israelites, but its described behaviors read less like a miracle and more like a hazardous technological manual. It was said to guide the people as a pillar of cloud by day and fire by night, but it also possessed a terrifying, lethal power. It could strike down those who touched it improperly, as it did with Uzzah, who steadied it during transport and was instantly killed. It could topple idols such as the Philistine statue of Dagon, which was found broken and prostrate before it, According to some interpretations, it even emitted a constant, radiant energy referred to as the glory of the Lord, which required priests to wear special protective garments to approach it. This was not a passive object of veneration. It was an active, powerful, and dangerously volatile artifact. Its sudden and complete disappearance from the historical record following the Babylonian conquest of Jerusalem in 587 BC has fueled an obsession that spans millennia. Where did it go? The most prominent tradition, held by the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, asserts that the Ark was secretly moved to Axum, Ethiopia, by Menelik I, the purported son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. There, it is said to reside to this day within the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion, guarded by a single, lifelong monk who is its sole custodian. While this claim is compelling and deeply rooted in Ethiopian national identity, it remains unverifiable as the guardian alone is permitted to see it. Other theories are equally fascinating. Some suggest it was hidden deep beneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, in a chamber yet to be discovered. Others propose it was taken to Egypt or even Europe, secreted away by the Knights Templar, whose sudden wealth and power some attribute to the discovery of sacred relics. Despite countless expeditions from medieval treasure hunters to modern archaeologists, no definitive physical evidence of the Ark has ever been found, leaving its fate one of history's greatest unsolved puzzles. This lack of physical proof, however, has not stopped researchers from attempting to reverse engineer the Ark based on its biblical description. The most compelling technological theory posits that it functioned as a powerful electrical capacitor. The design details are remarkably specific, a gold-covered box acting as two conductors separated by an insulator, the wood. Inside, two gold cherubim with wings outstretched toward each other could have formed the electrodes. The environment it was carried in, the arid desert, is perfect for generating static electricity. If the Ark was placed on a dry, sandy surface and carried on poles that caused friction with its gold casing, it could have built up a tremendous electrostatic charge. This would explain the fatal shocks delivered to anyone who touched it directly, as they would complete the circuit to the ground. The glory of the Lord could have been a visible corona discharge or even St. Elmo's fire crackling between the cherubim's wings. Another, more speculative theory suggests it may have contained a radioactive substance, perhaps even the manna from heaven, which had decayed into a radioactive state. This could account for the requirement for protective clothing and the reported illnesses that befell the Philistines who captured it, symptoms which some argue resemble radiation sickness. Ultimately, the true power of the Ark's legend lies in this perfect intersection of faith, history, and speculative science. It forces us to confront a fascinating question. Could the divine miracles that shaped ancient civilizations have been, at least in part, the result of advanced but lost technology? If a priestly class possessed a unique understanding of natural phenomena like electricity, their ability to harness it would have seemed utterly miraculous to the common person, solidifying their spiritual authority and guiding a nation. The Ark represents the idea that sacred objects were not just symbols of power, but perhaps the very vessels of that power, sophisticated devices whose operational secrets died with their keepers. Its story is a powerful reminder that the distinction between the spiritual and the scientific is a modern concept. To the ancient world, they were often one and the same, a fusion of belief and engineering that challenges our understanding of the past. And this concept of a civilization wielding a powerful, mysterious energy source finds its ultimate expression not in a portable chest, but in an entire sunken metropolis. From a divinely charged artifact that guided a nation, we turn to the legend of an entire civilization powered by a force beyond our understanding, the lost island of Atlantis. The story begins not with myth but with philosophy in the dialogues of the ancient Greek thinker Plato. Around 360 BCE, in his works Timaeus and Critias, he described a powerful and advanced kingdom that existed 9,000 years before his own time. This was not a simple city, it was a vast island continent located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. Plato's Atlantis was a marvel of engineering and social order, with concentric rings of land and water, grand canals, and a magnificent capital city. But its most captivating feature and the core of its power was its mysterious energy source. The Atlanteans, Plato suggested, had harnessed the very forces of the earth to fuel their society, a technology so potent it allowed them to build a utopian empire that eventually fell to hubris and was, in a single terrible day and night, swallowed by the sea. This account, presented by Plato as a moral parable about the dangers of arrogance and the ideal state, has transcended its philosophical origins to become the world's most famous and enduring lost civilization myth, primarily because of that tantalizing hint of a forgotten, advanced power source. The descriptions of this energy are vague, passed down through cryptic clues, which is what has fueled centuries of speculation. Some interpretations suggest the Atlanteans mastered geothermal energy, tapping directly into the volcanic heat of the earth through vast underground conduits to power their cities and heat their homes. This theory gains traction from the most popular proposed locations for Atlantis, such as the island of Santorini in the Mediterranean. Santorini, known in antiquity as Thera, was the site of one of the most catastrophic volcanic eruptions in human history around 1600 BCE, which utterly devastated the sophisticated Minoan civilization on Crete. The geological profile of the region, with its intense volcanic activity, could easily support the idea of a culture learning to harness geothermal power. An even more captivating theory proposes that the Atlanteans used massive, specially tuned crystals to capture, amplify, and transmit energy. These legendary fire crystals are described in various esoteric traditions as being able to channel the planet's natural energies, perhaps even from the atmosphere or cosmic sources, creating a wireless power grid that could operate everything from transportation to lighting. This idea, while seemingly fantastical, finds a curious echo in our modern understanding of piezoelectricity, the ability of certain materials like quartz to generate an electric charge when subjected to mechanical stress. Could an ancient civilization have discovered a primitive form of this principle? This leads to the inevitable question: is there any physical evidence that could point to a real Atlantis or its fabled technology? The search has focused on two main types of artifacts: geological anomalies and archaeological curiosities. In the Atlantic Ocean, around the Azores archipelago, some researchers point to underwater geological formations that resemble man-made roads or walls, though most geologists attribute these to natural volcanic basalt formations. The discovery of the Bimini Road off the coast of Florida, a line of submerged, rectangular limestone blocks, similarly sparked excitement, but again, the scientific consensus leans toward it being a natural beach rock formation. The most compelling potential artifacts are not grand structures, but smaller, unexplained objects that suggest a knowledge of energy. The aforementioned Baghdad battery, if indeed it was a galvanic cell, proves that the concept of generating electricity was known in the ancient world. Could this principle have been discovered far earlier and on a much grander scale? Furthermore, the precise machining of hard stones like granite in ancient Egypt, which would have required advanced tools, sometimes leads theorists to suggest the use of powerful, energy-driven machinery that has since been lost. While none of this constitutes proof, it creates a fascinating web of what if that keeps the legend alive. Ultimately, The true power of the Atlantis legend is not in its historical reality, but in the profound questions it forces us to ask about our own past and future. It challenges the linear narrative of human progress, suggesting that there may have been peaks and valleys in technological advancement that we know nothing about. It pushes us to reconsider what ancient peoples were truly capable of and to look at archaeological finds with a more open and curious mind. More importantly, the concept of a civilization using clean, sustainable energy drawn directly from the planet is a powerful and urgent metaphor for our own time. As we grapple with climate change and the transition away from fossil fuels, the idea of the Atlanteans living in harmony with a natural power source is incredibly appealing. It serves as both a warning and an inspiration, a warning about the catastrophic end that can befall even the greatest society that loses its way, and an inspiration to pursue the very kind of clean energy technology that the legend describes. The story of Atlantis, therefore, is far more than a search for a sunken city. It is a reflection of our own aspirations for a powered, peaceful, and sustainable world. And this fascination with harnessing natural forces for the benefit of society finds a much more personal application in the next legend, which shifts the focus from powering a city to preserving a single, precious life. This universal yearning to cheat death brings us to one of humanity's most persistent and captivating dreams, the quest for the Elixir of Life. This wasn't a legend confined to a single culture. It was a global obsession, a deep-seated drive that emerged independently in civilizations separated by vast oceans and millennia. In ancient China, the myth is deeply entwined with the legendary Yellow Emperor Huangdi, a sovereign and cultural hero who was said to have discovered the secrets of immortality and ascended to heaven on a dragon. Chinese Taoist alchemists, particularly during the Qin and Han dynasties, dedicated centuries to the pursuit of the Weiden, or external elixir. They conducted dangerous experiments, heating and combining substances like cinnabar, mercury, sulfur, and jade in complex furnaces, believing they could create a golden pill that would purify the body and grant eternal life. Tragically, this pursuit may have claimed the life of the very first emperor of a unified China, Qin Shi Huang, who is believed to have died from mercury poisoning after consuming elixirs meant to make him immortal. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, the great conqueror Alexander the Great was said to have embarked on his own search. Legends tell of a journey to the ends of the known world, to a mythical fountain or river whose waters could restore youth, a quest that reflected his own insatiable desire to conquer not just territories, but the limits of human existence itself. In medieval Europe, alchemists like Paracelsus and Ramon Llull sought the elixir as the ultimate goal of their art, a liquid counterpart to the philosopher's stone that could heal all ailments and halt the aging process entirely. What did these elusive potions actually contain? The recipes, passed down through cryptic manuscripts and oral traditions, were as varied as the cultures that conceived them. They often called for a bewildering array of rare and exotic ingredients, blending the mineral, the botanical, and the utterly fantastical. Chinese texts might prescribe a concoction of powdered pearl, jade dust, gold flecks, and rare herbs like lingjai mushroom, all fused together in a crucible. Persian and Arabic alchemical manuscripts describe elaborate distillation processes for creating ab-i-hayat, the water of life, using rose petals, herbs, and metals. European recipes could include everything from the venom of a rare serpent to the morning dew collected from specific flowers under a full moon. The methods of preparation were just as important as the ingredients, often requiring precise astrological alignments, ritual incantations, and specialized apparatus. This was a process that blurred the lines completely between laboratory science, spiritual ritual, and outright magic. the creation of the elixir was never just a chemical procedure. It was a sacred act of transformation, meant to alter the very soul of the alchemist as much as the substance in their flask. While no one has ever discovered a vial of a 2,000-year-old potion that actually works, archaeologists have unearthed a fascinating material record of this eternal quest. In ancient tombs across China, vessels have been found that still contain residues of mercury, cinnabar, and other mineral compounds, physical proof that emperors were buried with their failed immortality pills, hoping to continue the quest in the afterlife. The discovery of elaborate distillation equipment like terra-cotta alembics and coiled condensers in Hellenistic and medieval sites shows that the technical capability to purify and concentrate substances was very much present. Perhaps the most compelling artifacts are the ancient pharmacopoeias themselves. Texts like the Shenong Bencao Jing, a Chinese treatise on agriculture and medicine from the 1st or 2nd century, detail the properties of hundreds of substances, many with purported life-extending qualities. The Ebers Papyrus from ancient Egypt, while not solely focused on immortality, contains numerous recipes for promoting vitality and strength, revealing a sophisticated and ongoing experimentation with the natural world to push the boundaries of human health and lifespan. The most fascinating aspect of the Elixir of Life legend is how it has not faded into history but has instead evolved, finding a new home in the most advanced laboratories of the 21st century. Modern science, in its own way, is pursuing the same fundamental goal. Today, we don't call it an elixir, we call it biotechnology, genetic engineering, and regenerative medicine. Researchers are investigating the potential of telomerase enzymes to slow cellular aging, exploring the rejuvenating properties of stem cells, and developing senolytic drugs designed to clear out aging, dysfunctional cells from the body. The study of certain compounds like rapamycin and metformin for their potential life-extending effects is a direct scientific echo of the alchemists testing their metallic concoctions. Even the concept of a single, miraculous substance has been replaced by the understanding that longevity is a complex puzzle involving genetics, metabolism, and cellular repair. The ancient desire is unchanged. We still seek to conquer decay and extend our healthy years, but our methods have shifted from mystical recipes to randomized controlled trials. This continuous thread, stretching from a Taoist monk's furnace to a modern gene sequencer, demonstrates that the most powerful legends are those that tap into a fundamental human drive, one that continues to fuel innovation and remind us that the quest for a longer, healthier life is one of the most enduring and noble chapters in the story of human ingenuity. Leaving behind the intimate pursuit of personal immortality, we now turn our attention to a legend of a very different scale, a testament not to the extension of life, but to the immortality of human ambition and engineering prowess. The Colossus of Rhodes was not merely a statue, it was a declaration. Erected around 280 BCE, it celebrated the hard-fought victory of the Rhodians over an invading Cypriot army. This was not just a monument to a military success, it was a symbol of resilience, unity, and their supreme devotion to Helios, the sun god and patron deity of the island. Forged from the very bronze and iron of the abandoned siege engines left by their defeated enemy, the Colossus was a powerful act of recycling triumph from the tools of war. It stood for just over half a century, a gleaming titan that captured the ancient world's imagination and secured its place as one of the seven wonders, not for its longevity, but for its audacious scale and the breathtaking ingenuity required to bring it into being. The most enduring and captivating image of the Colossus is the one that has persisted for centuries, a giant bronze god bestriding the entrance to the Mandrake harbor, with ships passing peacefully between his legs. This romantic vision, however, is almost certainly a later medieval invention. Modern historians and engineers largely dismiss this idea. The practical challenges of constructing a hollow bronze figure in such a wide-legged stance over a busy, working waterway would have been nearly insurmountable with ancient technology. The harbor entrance is also simply too wide. It is far more plausible that the statue was built in a more traditional, solid stance on a massive stone pedestal on one side of the harbor entrance, or perhaps even further inland, overlooking the city. Its primary purpose was to be seen, to dominate the skyline and serve as a towering beacon of civic pride for all approaching vessels, not to function as a literal gateway. This recalibration of its image does nothing to diminish its grandeur. It simply shifts our awe from a poetic fantasy to the tangible, and arguably even more impressive, reality of its construction. So how was such a behemoth, estimated to stand over 100 feet tall, actually built? The accounts that have come down to us, primarily from writers like Pliny the Elder and Philo of Byzantium, suggest a feat of engineering that was centuries ahead of its time. The statue was not cast as a single, solid piece of bronze. Instead, the Rhodians employed a technique known as repoussé, or hollow casting. They constructed a massive stone and iron framework to serve as the internal skeleton. Onto this armature, they painstakingly hammered and formed sheets of bronze, attaching them piece by piece to slowly skin the giant. The lower sections were likely filled with stones and rubble, not just for stability, but to act as a counterweight against the immense wind loads pushing against the upper body. This method of construction was revolutionary, allowing them to build taller and with greater stability than any solid cast statue could have achieved. The technological features hinted at in ancient coins and descriptions, the possibility of internal staircases for maintenance, or even a chamber in the head that could have held a fire to serve as a primitive lighthouse, speak to a level of sophistication that blurred the line between sculpture and functional architecture. Tragically, this marvel of human achievement met a predictably violent end. In 226 BCE, a powerful earthquake struck Rhodes. The quake shattered the statue at its weakest points, most likely the knees, causing it to collapse into a massive heap of broken bronze and stone. An offer from Ptolemy III of Egypt to fund its complete reconstruction was reportedly declined after the Rhodians consulted an oracle who feared they had offended the god Helios. For nearly 9 centuries, the ruins lay where they fell, becoming a tourist attraction in their own right. Pliny the Elder noted that even in its broken state, few people could wrap their arms around the fallen thumb, and the hollow limbs were like vast, cavernous tunnels. This vast scrap heap was finally sold off in the 7th century CE to a Syrian merchant who, according to legend, needed 900 camels to cart all the metal away, an ignominious end for one of the ancient world's greatest treasures. The legacy of the Colossus, however, far outlasts its physical form. It became the ultimate symbol of colossal ambition and its inevitable fragility. It inspired the French sculptor Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi in the creation of the Statue of Liberty, another giant figure holding a torch aloft, built using similar techniques of a copper skin over an iron armature and serving as a beacon of freedom and hope to a new world. The Colossus forces us to confront a sobering reality of history. How many other monumental achievements, equal or even greater in scale and ingenuity, have been completely erased by the relentless forces of earthquakes, tsunamis, or the slow decay of time? Its story is a powerful reminder that our entire understanding of the ancient world is built upon the fragile, fragmented evidence that managed to survive. The Colossus of Rhodes stands as a ghost in the historical record, a testament to the breathtaking heights ancient engineers could reach, and a permanent question mark about all the other wonders we can only imagine were lost. And from this silent, fallen giant of bronze, we now turn our attention to a legend whose power was not in its imposing silence, but in its captivating and mysterious sound. After the silent, fallen giant of bronze, we now turn our attention to a legend whose power was not in its imposing silence, but in its captivating and mysterious sound. The myth of Orpheus and his enchanted lyre stands as one of the most poignant in all of Greek mythology, a story where music itself becomes a tangible, world-altering force. Orpheus was no mere musician. He was a hero whose art transcended entertainment, charming wild beasts into peaceful submission, coaxing trees and rocks to uproot themselves and follow him in a dancing procession, and even softening the hearts of the gods of the underworld. His most famous journey was his desperate descent into Hades to retrieve his beloved wife, Eurydice. There, his music was so profoundly beautiful, so filled with genuine grief and love, that it momentarily suspended the eternal, unforgiving laws of the dead. The Furies, deities of vengeance, wept for the first time. Hades and Persephone, the stern rulers of the realm, were moved to grant his request, a testament to the irresistible power they attributed to his playing. This was not magic in the simple sense of a spell. It was portrayed as a fundamental mastery over the very fabric of the universe through vibration and harmony, suggesting the ancient Greeks held a deep, almost scientific belief in the tangible power of sound. This legendary power finds a fascinating echo in the real, physical artifacts unearthed by archaeologists. While the specific lyre of Orpheus remains elusive, we have discovered instruments that show the sophisticated craftsmanship that could inspire such tales. The lyres of for example, are a collection of stringed instruments excavated from royal tombs in Mesopotamia, dating back an astonishing 4,500 years. These are not primitive noisemakers, they are exquisite works of art constructed from fine woods, inlaid with lapis lazuli, gold, and shell, featuring elaborate bull-headed carvings. Their design reveals a complex understanding of acoustics and resonance chambers. Similarly, elaborately decorated lyres appear on ancient Greek pottery and in frescoes, often depicted in the hands of gods and heroes. The very existence of these finely made instruments proves that ancient cultures were not just creating sound, they were engineering it, experimenting with materials and shapes to produce richer, more complex, and more emotionally compelling harmonics. This technological pursuit of perfect sound provides a credible foundation for legends that attribute near-magical properties to music. Modern science is now beginning to catch up with this ancient intuition, providing a compelling framework for how the magic of Orpheus's lyre might have worked. The field of cymatics studies the visible effects of sound and vibration on matter, showing how specific frequencies can create intricate, geometric patterns in sand or water. If sound can order matter in such a precise way, could a specific harmonic sequence theoretically influence the structure of stone or the behavior of living tissue? This is the realm of speculation, but it aligns with the legend. Furthermore, the modern therapeutic use of sound, in sonic lithotripsy to break up kidney stones, in ultrasound imaging, or in sound baths used for deep meditation and stress relief, demonstrates that vibration has a direct, measurable impact on the physical world and the human body. The idea that Orpheus might have discovered a form of resonant frequency that could pacify a nervous system or temporarily alter the state of matter is no longer pure fantasy, but a concept that bridges mythology and cutting-edge physics. Ultimately, the enduring legacy of the Lyre of Orpheus is its powerful illustration of the inseparable link between art and science, a connection modern thinking often tries to separate. In the ancient world, the musician was also a mathematician, studying the ratios of string lengths that produced perfect harmonies. The engineer was an artist, sculpting instruments that were both sonically and visually magnificent. Orpheus embodies this unity. His story suggests that true power and understanding come not from technology alone, nor from art alone, but from the fusion of the two, the application of technical skill in the service of profound emotional expression. It challenges us to view our own technological advancements not as cold and mechanical, but as potential instruments for creating beauty, fostering connection, and perhaps even healing the world around us. His myth is a timeless reminder that some of humanity's most advanced and powerful technologies might not be made of gears and steel, but of wood, string, and the resonant space between a note and the human soul. From the enchanting power of sound that could sway the gods, we now travel to a technology rooted in silence and fire, one that sought not to persuade the divine, but to decipher its will. In the court of the Shang dynasty kings, over 3,600 years ago, the most critical decisions of state were not made by human whim alone. Before launching a military campaign, before a royal hunt, or to understand the cause of a terrible drought or a queen's illness, the ruling class turned to a sophisticated and ritualized process of divination using what we now call oracle bones. This was not mere superstition. It was a formal system of communication with the supernatural world, a complex technology of prediction that utilized the most advanced materials and methods of its day. The process was meticulous. A royal diviner, a highly respected priestly official, would take a carefully prepared bone, often the shoulder blade of an ox or the plastron, the flat underside of a tortoise shell. The surface would be smoothed and polished to a fine finish. Upon this canvas, the diviner would use a sharp tool to inscribe a question, often phrased in a positive and negative pair. In the next 10 days, will there be disaster? Or, the king should attack the Qiangfang tribe, will we receive assistance? Then came the crucial pyrotechnic act. The diviner would apply intense heat, likely from a metal rod taken from a blazing fire, to pre-drilled hollows on the back of the bone. The stress from this rapid, localized heating would cause the bone to crack with a series of sharp reports on the opposite side. These cracks, known as the zhao, were not random. To the trained eye of the diviner, they were a direct script from the ancestors, the answer to the inscribed question. The pattern of the cracks, their length, direction, and shape was interpreted as a positive or negative response, a blessing or a warning. Often, the king himself would make the final interpretation, his authority as the intermediary between heaven and earth being confirmed by the ritual. Following the reading, the entire event, including the question, the prognostication, and sometimes even the eventual outcome, would be carved into the bone around the cracks, creating a permanent record of this divine conversation. This practice represents a breathtaking fusion of spiritual belief and practical innovation, turning common animal remains into a sacred interface for navigating an uncertain world. The true, staggering significance of these objects was lost for millennia until their accidental rediscovery in the late 19th century. For centuries, local farmers in the area around the ancient Shang capital of Yin, near modern-day Anyang, had been digging up these curious inscribed bones and shells. They called them dragon bones and would often grind them into a powder to be used in traditional medicine, a tragically ironic fate for some of the world's oldest historical documents. The turning point came around 1899, when a scholar and antiquarian named Wang Yang, suffering from malaria, supposedly recognized the ancient script on a bone brought to him as medicine. Realizing their immense historical value, he began a frantic collection effort. This sparked a wave of scholarly interest and eventually legitimate archaeological excavations that have yielded over 200,000 fragments. These artifacts are nothing short of a time capsule, providing an incredibly detailed and contemporaneous record of the Shang dynasty that had previously existed only in later, semi-legendary historical texts. The inscriptions on these bones are the direct ancestors of modern Chinese characters, offering an unparalleled window into the early evolution of one of the world's oldest continuous writing systems. The content of these inscriptions has allowed historians to move beyond myth and construct a remarkably vivid picture of Shang society. We learn not just about the king's concerns for war and harvest, but about the intricate details of daily life. The bones record questions about the success of the royal childbirth, dreams the king had and their potential meanings, the scheduling of rituals, and even the weather on a specific day. We know the names of the diviners, the kings they served, and the enemies they feared. Most importantly, the practice itself reveals a highly structured, bureaucratic state where no significant action was taken without first consulting the ancestral spirits through this prescribed technological ritual. The oracle bones were the central processing unit of the Shang kingdom, the mechanism through which divine will was translated into royal policy. This system of pyromancy, of heat-induced cracking, was not unique to China. Similar practices are found in cultures across the globe, from the scapulomancy of ancient North American peoples to ancient Roman augurs who read the future in the cracks of sacrificed animals' bones. But the Shang practice is unparalleled in its scale, its meticulous record-keeping, and its direct role in birthing a written language. The legacy of the oracle bone technology is profound, echoing far beyond the fall of the Shang dynasty. It established a precedent for bureaucratic record-keeping that would become a hallmark of Chinese civilization for thousands of years. The very act of inscribing the outcomes created a historical consciousness, a desire to document and learn from the past. While the practice of pyroscapulomancy eventually faded, the underlying desire to predict and understand the future through patterns in nature never did. It evolved into the complex system of the I Ching, or Book of Changes, which uses a more abstract and mathematical system of broken and unbroken lines instead of physical cracks, yet serves a similar philosophical purpose of providing guidance in a complex world. The oracle bones stand as a powerful testament to humanity's relentless drive to find order in chaos, to use the tools and materials at hand, be they bone, fire, and a sharp blade, to build a bridge to the unknown and inscribe its messages for generations to come. This ancient method of seeking answers from the patterns of the natural world finds a fascinating parallel in another legendary navigational tool, one used not by land-based kings, but by intrepid seafarers facing the featureless expanse of the open ocean. Now, let's journey from the ritual fires of ancient Chinese divination to the cold, mist-shrouded seas of the North Atlantic, where another form of pattern recognition, far more physical and immediate, may have guided one of history's most daring groups of explorers. The Vikings, those legendary seafarers from Scandinavia, accomplished feats of navigation that still baffle historians today. Without the magnetic compass, which wouldn't reach Europe until centuries later, they managed to cross thousands of miles of treacherous open ocean, settling Iceland and Greenland and even reaching the shores of North America around the year 1000. They did this in a world where the sun could be hidden for days by dense cloud cover, fog, or the long, dark twilight of the northern latitudes. How did they do it? The Norse sagas, those epic tales of exploration and conquest, hint at a secret tool, the solar stein or sunstone. This wasn't a mythical object of fantasy. It was described in a matter-of-fact way in texts like the Rothelf's Thotter, where King Olaf holds a crystal up to the sky to check the position of the sun on a completely overcast day. This passing reference suggests the sunstone was a known, practical instrument, a piece of technology crucial for venturing into the unknown. The leading scientific theory proposes that these legendary sunstones were actually crystals of a common mineral like calcite, Iceland spar, or cordierite. These minerals possess a fascinating optical property called birefringence, or double refraction. When a beam of light enters such a crystal, it splits into two separate rays. This happens because light waves vibrating in different directions travel through the crystal at slightly different speeds. Sunlight itself becomes partially polarized when it scatters through the Earth's atmosphere, meaning its waves tend to vibrate more in one direction than others. The pattern of this polarization forms a kind of bullseye around the sun itself, a pattern invisible to the human eye but detectable with the right tool. The theory is that a Viking navigator would hold a clear crystal up to the sky and slowly rotate it. Even through thick cloud, the crystal would react to this polarized light. At a certain orientation, the crystal would appear to brighten or change color slightly, while at another, 90 degrees off, it would appear darker. By finding these points of maximum and minimum light transmission and marking them on the crystal, the navigator could draw an imaginary line that would point directly to the hidden sun, allowing them to establish east and west and set their course with astonishing accuracy. For a long time, this theory remained an intriguing but unproven hypothesis. Then, archaeology provided a tantalizing piece of evidence. In a 16th century shipwreck discovered off the coast of Alderney in the English Channel, excavators found a rectangular block of Iceland spar crystal near a pair of navigational dividers and other tools. While this ship was not Viking, it dated to a time when the magnetic compass was already in common use, suggesting that sailors might have still kept these traditional sunstones as a reliable backup. More recently, an even more compelling discovery was made in the wreck of an Elizabethan warship that sank in 1592. Amidst the wreckage, archaeologists recovered a small, whitish crystal. Initial analysis suggests it is Iceland spar, and its location on the ship, alongside the captain's navigation equipment, strongly implies it was a functional tool, not merely cargo or personal treasure. These finds provide the first tangible, physical link to the saga's descriptions, moving the sunstone from the realm of pure legend into the arena of plausible historical technology. Modern experimental archaeology has put the sunstone theory to the test with remarkable results. Researchers have constructed simple navigation protocols using calibrated Iceland spar crystals. In one notable experiment, a team led by optical physicist Guy Roppars used a crystal to determine the sun's position with an accuracy of within 1 degree, even when the sun was well below the horizon. Another study demonstrated that with minimal training, volunteers could successfully use a replica sunstone to find the sun's bearing on overcast days. These experiments prove that the method is not only theoretically sound, but also practically feasible with the technology and materials available to the Vikings. It would have required a deep, empirical understanding of light and weather patterns, knowledge gained through generations of observation and seafaring experience. This wasn't magic, it was sophisticated applied science, a brilliant harnessing of a natural mineral's property to solve a critical problem of survival. The Vikings didn't need to understand the physics of polarization. They simply needed to know that the crystal worked, and their legendary voyages stand as a powerful testament to its potential effectiveness. The existence of the sunstone fundamentally challenges our perception of the so-called Dark Ages. It reveals a society capable of remarkably nuanced observation and innovation. one that developed a form of optical technology centuries before the underlying principles were formally described by scientists. It forces us to reconsider how ancient and medieval peoples interacted with their environment, not as superstitious primitives, but as practical physicists who learned to read the subtle clues hidden in nature. The Viking Sunstone represents a perfect marriage of human ingenuity and the natural world, a simple crystal lifted to the sky that could illuminate a path across an entire ocean. This brilliant application of natural science for exploration stands in stark contrast to our next legend, which explores the terrifying opposite, the application of advanced knowledge not for discovery, but for absolute and utter destruction. Leaving behind the subtle art of celestial navigation, we now confront a legend of pure, unadulterated power, a force of destruction so absolute that its descriptions seem to leap from the pages of ancient scripture into the terrifying reality of the modern age. The Brahmastra, as described in the Hindu epics like the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, was not merely a weapon, it was the ultimate embodiment of divine wrath, a device that blurred the line between metaphysical invocation and technological deployment. It was said to be the personal weapon of the creator god Brahma, but it could be bestowed upon mortals, great sages and warriors who possessed the immense spiritual discipline to master the specific mantras required to summon it. The process of its invocation was as critical as the weapon itself. It was not simply fired from a bow or launched from a machine. It was activated through intense concentration and the precise, potent recitation of sacred sounds, a process that bound the user's will to the cosmic power of destruction. Once unleashed, its effects were described with a chilling specificity that resonates deeply with a contemporary understanding of warfare. Texts describe it as a single projectile, charged with all the power of the universe, appearing as a gigantic column of smoke and flame as brilliant as 10,000 suns. It was said to rise into the sky with terrifying noise and speed, bringing with it a violent wind that knocked down trees and crushed buildings. Where it struck, the land became barren and lifeless for generations, and survivors were cursed to lose their hair and nails, succumbing to a wasting sickness that sounds hauntingly familiar to the effects of radiation poisoning. This eerie similarity to the effects of a nuclear detonation has fueled intense speculation and debate for decades. Could these ancient texts be preserving a cultural memory of a real, catastrophic technological event from a forgotten era? Proponents of this theory, often referred to as the ancient astronaut or ancient nuclear war hypothesis, point to several compelling pieces of potential evidence. The most frequently cited is the state of the ancient city of Mohenjo-Daro, one of the largest settlements of the Indus Valley civilization. When archaeologists excavated the site, they found layers of rubble and ash, and most intriguingly, sections of the city that appeared to have been vitrified, that is, fused into a glass-like state by exposure to extreme heat, estimated to be around 1,500 degrees Celsius. While mainstream archaeology attributes this to massive, concentrated fires perhaps from an invasion and subsequent burning of the city using oils and other accelerants, theorists argue that such vitrification is a known effect of a nuclear or thermonuclear explosion. They also point to reportedly higher than normal levels of radioactivity found in some of the skeletons excavated from the site, though these claims are hotly contested and lack rigorous scientific verification. The legend itself adds to this mystique, as the texts explicitly warn that the Brahmastra should never be used against lesser opponents or in human conflict, as it would ultimately destroy the entire world, a profound ethical caution that mirrors our own modern nuclear deterrence doctrine. Beyond the controversial archaeological interpretations, the most concrete artifacts we have are the texts themselves. The ancient Indian scriptures, particularly the Dana Veda, which deals with the art of warfare, are said to contain detailed descriptions of various astras, or divine weapons, with the Brahmastra being the most powerful. These texts reportedly outline not only the mantras for invocation, but also the strict prerequisites for the user, including mental purity and celibacy, and the dire consequences of its misuse. They describe a complex protocol for its use, including rituals to withdraw the weapon if it was launched unjustly, suggesting a deep understanding of the need for control and responsibility over such devastating power. These narratives serve as a powerful mythological framework for exploring the ethical dimensions of technological advancement. The Brahmastra is never portrayed as a tool for conquest. It is a weapon of last resort, a deterrent whose very existence is meant to preserve cosmic order or dharma. Its stories are often morality tales about the corrupting influence of absolute power and the devastating consequences when spiritual discipline is overridden by ambition and rage, as seen in the epic Kurukshetra war, where its use leads to unparalleled suffering. Whether one interprets the Brahmastra as a metaphor for spiritual power, a distorted memory of a natural disaster like a volcanic eruption or meteor impact, or literal evidence of a lost high technology, its enduring power lies in its prescient symbolism. It stands as a stunning allegory for humanity's cyclical relationship with its own destructive potential. Thousands of years ago, ancient storytellers were already grappling with the same existential fears that plague us today in the nuclear age. The fear of a weapon that could end all wars by making war itself unthinkable, the terror of a force that leaves the land poisoned for centuries, and the profound moral burden that comes with possessing the knowledge to unravel creation itself. The Brahmastra challenges us to consider that our current technological pinnacle may not be unique, that ancient civilizations might have wrestled with similarly apocalyptic powers, and that these stories were the vehicle they used to encode those traumatic memories and pass down a critical warning about the sacred and dangerous relationship between knowledge and wisdom. From the terrifying, world-shattering potential of the Brahmastra, we now turn inward to a legend that is intimate, unsettling, and profoundly personal. The quest to create artificial life not on a battlefield, but in the confines of a laboratory flask. The homunculus represents one of alchemy's most audacious and eerie ambitions, the artificial creation of a miniature, fully formed human being. This was not the work of gods or demons, according to its most famous proponent, the 16th century Swiss physician and alchemist Paracelsus. It was a technical recipe, a scientific procedure outlined in his work De Natura Rerum. He described a process that was both grotesque and methodical, the use of human sperm sealed in a sealed glass vessel and placed in a bed of fermenting horse manure for 40 days. The manure provided a constant, gentle heat, acting as a primitive incubator. After this period, the substance would begin to live and move, becoming a transparent, human-like form that required to be fed daily with a small amount of human blood for another 40 weeks, at which point it would develop into a living, breathing homunculus, a tiny man no larger than a hand's breadth. This creature was said to possess great wisdom and secret knowledge, serving as a powerful familiar to its creator. This concept was a breathtaking leap, positing that the miracle of life was not a divine mystery but a chemical process that could be replicated, controlled, and harnessed by human ingenuity. Paracelsus was far from alone in this pursuit. He was simply the most systematic in documenting it. The desire to generate life from base matter is a thread that runs through alchemical traditions across the world. In Jewish mysticism, the legend of the Golem, a being fashioned from clay and animated by sacred words, explores a similar theme of artificial creation, though through spiritual rather than chemical means. Earlier Arabic alchemical texts also contain references to creating life in vitro, suggesting a long-standing cross-cultural fascination with this ultimate act of manipulation. The homunculus was the ultimate symbol of the alchemist's power, representing the pinnacle of the magnum opus or great work. It wasn't just about creating gold, it was about rivaling the creative power of God himself, about understanding and mastering the very spark of animation that separates the living from the inert. This pursuit perfectly encapsulates the alchemical worldview, where the boundaries between science, philosophy, magic, and religion were fluid and indistinguishable. The homunculus was both a literal goal and a powerful metaphor for the alchemist's own spiritual rebirth and enlightenment through their arduous work. Thankfully, no preserved homunculi in jars have ever been discovered, but the historical record is rich with artifacts that document this profound obsession. The most compelling evidence lies in the intricate and often bizarre illustrations that fill alchemical manuscripts. These texts, such as the works of Paracelsus or the later Mutus Liber, the Silent Book, are filled with images of flasks containing tiny human figures, often shown floating in a liquid or connected by tubes to celestial bodies, symbolizing the infusion of cosmic spirit into the material form. These were not just fanciful drawings, they were detailed diagrams, part of a coded visual language intended to guide the initiate through the process. Beyond images, we have the recipes themselves. Countless manuscripts detail variations on the formula, sometimes substituting mare's milk for blood or specifying particular astrological alignments for the sealing of the flask. The physical tools of the alchemist, the elaborate glass retorts, the pelicans for circulation, and the meticulously controlled furnaces, are also artifacts of this quest. These were the 16th century equivalents of Petri dishes and incubators, the cutting-edge technology of their day deployed in the service of what we would now call synthetic biology. From our modern vantage point, the literal recipe of the homunculus seems absurd, a product of pre-scientific misunderstanding. However, its symbolic and prophetic power is undeniable. The homunculus can be seen as a startlingly prescient metaphor for numerous fields of contemporary science. In the world of cloning, such as the creation of Dolly the sheep, we see the literal generation of a new life from a single cell, bypassing traditional reproduction. In vitro fertilization, where conception happens in a glass dish before implantation, directly echoes the alchemical dream of creating life outside the womb. The field of synthetic biology, where scientists work to design and construct new biological parts and systems, aims to create life from its fundamental chemical building blocks, essentially writing the code for living organisms. Even the concept of artificial intelligence, the attempt to create a conscious mind in a non-biological substrate, grapples with the same fundamental questions about the nature of life and creation that the alchemists explored. In this light, Paracelsus and his peers were not mere cranks. They were philosophical pioneers, using the language and tools available to them to ask the very questions that now define our most advanced ethical and technological frontiers. This brings us to the most enduring legacy of the homunculus myth, the profound ethical dilemma it forces upon us. The legend is inextricably linked to questions of morality and responsibility. In many stories, the homunculus, once created, is not a docile servant but a rebellious, dangerous, or deeply unhappy creature, bound to a creator who cannot fully control it. This narrative is a powerful ancient warning about the unforeseen consequences of playing God, about the ethical burden that comes with the power to create life. It challenges us to consider the rights of such a created being. Would it be a person or property? What duties would its creator owe it? these are not abstract questions. They are the very issues debated by bioethicists, lawmakers, and scientists today as we stand on the threshold of being able to genetically engineer humans, create advanced artificial general intelligence, and manipulate the very code of life. The homunculus, in all its bizarre and unsettling glory, is a mirror held up to our own ambitions, reminding us that the most important question is not can we do something, but should we, and if we do, what responsibilities we must bear for the life we choose to create. While the legend of the homunculus explored the mysteries of creating life, our next legend tackles a different kind of power altogether. The power to prove one's right to rule, not through birth or battle, but through a seemingly impossible feat of strength. The tale of the sword in the stone is one of the most iconic in all of Western folklore, immortalized in stories of King Arthur. As the legend goes, following the death of King Uther Pendragon, England was left without a rightful heir, plunging it into chaos and division. To resolve the crisis, a miraculous sword appeared, embedded deep within either a solid block of stone or an anvil that sat atop it, often placed in a churchyard. Inscribed upon it were the words that whichever man could pull the sword from the stone was the true and rightful King of England. Countless knights and nobles, the strongest and most arrogant in the land, tried and failed to budge the blade even an inch. It was only the young, overlooked Arthur, acting on a pure and simple impulse to fetch a sword for his foster brother's tournament, who effortlessly drew it forth, not through brute force, but through an inherent and recognized worthiness. On its surface, this is a classic story of divine right and destiny, a magical test to reveal a hidden king. But what if there was more to it? What if this wasn't pure magic, but a forgotten technology of authentication? A clever mechanical or material lock that only responded to the one person it was designed for. This idea moves the story from the realm of pure fantasy into the arena of speculative ancient engineering. One compelling theory suggests the setup could have utilized the principles of magnetism. Imagine a stone base that was, in fact, a massive natural lodestone, a magnetized block of iron ore. The sword itself could have been carefully balanced or crafted with a specific metallic composition. For anyone but the intended user, the magnetic pull, combined with the weight of the sword and the friction of its fit within the stone, would have made it impossible to withdraw. However, if Arthur, or the rightful ruler, knew of a specific trick, such as a precise twisting motion or a certain point of leverage that broke the magnetic seal, the feat would appear miraculous to onlookers. Another possibility involves a complex mechanical lock hidden within the anvil or stone. It could have been a primitive biometric device responding not to a key, but to a specific amount and distribution of pressure applied to the sword's handle or crossguard. A mechanism of counterweights, springs, or even a primitive tumbler lock could have been released by a unique combination of lifting, twisting, and pulling that was secretly taught to the true heir, making it impossible for anyone who didn't know the exact sequence to succeed. In this light, the sword in the stone transforms from a miracle into a brilliantly designed security system, a technological test of legitimacy that was so advanced for its time that its workings were interpreted as magic by those who witnessed it. While we have no archaeological evidence of a literal sword stuck in a stone, we do have fascinating historical artifacts that echo the legend's themes of legitimacy and exceptional weaponry. The Wallace sword, a massive two-handed claymore wielded by the Scottish hero William Wallace, is a real historical artifact that, while not magical, became a powerful symbol of resistance and rightful cause. More directly, numerous swords throughout history have been venerated as symbols of power and authority. The Sword of Mercy, or Curtana, is one of the crown jewels of the United Kingdom, a ceremonial weapon that symbolizes the sovereign's mercy. These real objects show us that swords were never just tools of war. They were potent symbols of office, and the idea of a specific, singular sword conferring the right to rule is a deeply ingrained concept. Furthermore, the legend is likely a conflation of two separate myths: the sword in the stone, which proves kingship, and the Lady of the Lake's gift of Excalibur, which ensures military victory. This blending over time created the powerful narrative we know today, where one sword tests virtue and the other empowers it. The enduring search for historical Excalibur replicas or potential burial sites, like the alleged tomb of Arthur at Glastonbury Tor, shows our relentless desire to find a material anchor for this powerful story. Ultimately, the deepest power of the sword in the stone legend is not in a potential technological explanation, but in its enduring function as a cultural and psychological metaphor. It is the ultimate narrative of the underdog, the idea that true worth is not found in brute strength, noble birth, or loud ambition, but in a quiet, inherent quality of character. The sword acts as a divining rod for virtue, a concept that resonates deeply in any era where leadership is questioned. It's a story that says the right to lead cannot be taken by force. It must be earned through a quality that the world itself recognizes and yields to. This metaphor extends into our modern world in surprising ways. We see echoes of it in biometric security systems, fingerprint scanners, retinal scans, and facial recognition software that act as our own modern swords in the stone, granting access only to the one uniquely authorized individual. The legend challenges us to consider what we use to authenticate leadership and value in our own society. Is it wealth, popularity, or is it, like the ancient tale suggests, a more intangible quality of integrity and rightful purpose that, when present, makes the impossible suddenly achievable? The story endures because it fulfills a profound human need to believe that the world is ultimately just, and that the right person at the right time will be revealed to guide us. Moving from the ancient world's dreams of artificial life, we find a strikingly similar ambition echoing through the halls of a 13th century European monastery, but with a distinctly mechanical twist. The legend of Saint Albertus Magnus and his talking brass head is a captivating story that perfectly captures the medieval mind's struggle to reconcile faith, reason, and a burgeoning curiosity about the mechanics of the world. Albertus, a Dominican friar, bishop, and one of the most brilliant minds of his age, was a renowned scholar of Aristotle and a pioneer in the field of natural philosophy. The tale, set against the backdrop of a Europe slowly reawakening to scientific inquiry, claims that over a period of 30 years, the great scholar used his vast knowledge of astrology, mathematics, and metallurgy to construct a magnificent head made entirely of brass. This was no simple statue. It was an automaton, an artificial man endowed with the power of speech. According to the lore, the head was designed to answer any question put to it, functioning as a kind of oracular engine capable of solving complex problems and predicting future events. This narrative places Albertus at a fascinating crossroads, seen simultaneously as a pious man of God and a master of arcane arts, a figure who could seemingly command the secrets of the universe through both prayer and precision engineering. The most intriguing question, of course, is how such a device could have possibly worked in an age without electricity or digital processors. While the story is often framed as magic, several plausible technological explanations rooted in the era's known capabilities have been proposed. One compelling theory suggests the head was an advanced pneumatic automaton, a sophisticated cousin to the wind-powered organs and singing mechanical birds known to exist in the Byzantine and Arab worlds. The brass head could have been hollow, housing a complex system of bellows, pipes, and reeds, perhaps even utilizing a form of steam pressure. A hidden assistant, or even Albertus himself, could have operated a discrete set of valves and levers to force air through specific pipes, sculpting recognizable vowel and consonant sounds, much like a massive, intricate calliope. Another possibility involves clever acoustic trickery. The head might have been positioned in a room with specially designed resonant tubes built into the walls or floor, allowing a person in another chamber to speak into a tube, their voice emerging from the brass figure's mouth with an eerie, metallic resonance. This would create a powerful and convincing illusion of an artificial intelligence for any observer in the room with the head, a ventriloquist act on a grand and philosophical scale. While the physical brass head itself has never been discovered, the legend left a clear mark on the cultural and artistic record of later centuries. The story is vividly recounted in 16th and 17th century texts, most famously in Robert Greene's play The Honourable History of Friar Bacon and Friar Bungay, where the concept is transferred to the character Roger Bacon. These manuscripts and plays are themselves artifacts of the legend's enduring power. Furthermore, visual depictions of scholars and magi in their studies from the Renaissance period often include automata, complex astrolabes, and other mysterious devices, reflecting a cultural fascination with the idea of artificial life and intelligence. These artistic representations serve as a proxy for the lost artifact, showing how the idea of the talking head captured the European imagination. It symbolizes a world where knowledge was not just written in books but could be embodied, given voice, and made to interact with the living. The absence of a physical head is, in a way, what makes the story so powerful. It exists as a pure idea, a thought experiment about the nature of intelligence and creation that transcended the need for physical proof. The true legacy of Albertus Magnus's brass head is its role as a profound and ancient precursor to our modern pursuit of artificial intelligence and robotics. This medieval legend demonstrates that the drive to create intelligent machines is not a product of the 20th century but a deeply rooted human aspiration. For centuries, we have been fascinated by the possibility of building a mirror of our own consciousness, a machine that can not only calculate but communicate. The brass head represents the very earliest glimmers of this desire, a time when the boundary between magical incantation and mechanical innovation was indistinguishable. It forces us to recognize that our current conversations about the ethics of AI, the potential for machine consciousness, and the relationship between creator and creation are not new. They are simply the latest chapter in a very old story. We are still essentially asking the same question Albertus was posed to have asked his creation, a question about the limits of our own power and the consequences of bestowing the gift of voice upon the inanimate. From the legendary brass head that sought to replicate human voice, we now turn to a technology that pursues the opposite effect, the complete eradication of one's presence. The desire to vanish, to move unseen, is one of humanity's most ancient and universal fantasies, finding expression in myths from every corner of the globe. In Greek mythology, this power was embodied by the cap of Hades, also known as the Helm of Darkness, a piece of divine armor worn by the god of the underworld that rendered its wearer completely invisible. This was no mere parlor trick. It was a tool of immense strategic power, used by heroes like Perseus to stealthily approach and slay the Gorgon Medusa. Norse legends tell of a similar artifact, a cloak of invisibility belonging to the goddess Freyja, crafted from the feathers of a falcon. In the folktales of medieval Europe, these items became common magical devices, enchanted garments that allowed their owners to overhear secrets, escape danger, or right wrongs without ever being detected. On the surface, these are simple stories of magic, but when we look closer, they reveal a deep and enduring human preoccupation with the science of concealment, a fascination with manipulating light and perception that feels startlingly prescient. Could these enduring legends be rooted in something more tangible than pure enchantment? Many theorists propose that they are metaphorical representations of very real and advanced ancient understandings of optics and material science. One of the most plausible explanations points to the early mastery of camouflage. Ancient hunters and warriors have always sought to blend into their environments, using mud, leaves, and animal skins to break up their silhouette. The development of textiles dyed with specific patterns to match forest or desert terrain could easily have been exaggerated over generations of storytelling into a cloak that granted perfect invisibility. Another compelling idea involves the understanding of refraction. The ancient Greeks, for instance, were deeply fascinated by optics. Philosophers like Euclid and Ptolemy wrote extensive treatises on the properties of light. While they didn't have the technology to create invisibility cloaks, their experiments with lenses and glass could have sparked the idea that light's path could be bent and manipulated. There are even accounts of sophisticated ancient glassworking that produced objects with strange optical properties, perhaps creating localized distortions that made things appear to waver or vanish, seeding the legend that such an effect could be controlled and worn. The most tantalizing connection, however, lies in the modern scientific field of metamaterials. These are artificially engineered materials designed to have properties not found in nature, specifically the ability to manipulate electromagnetic waves, including visible light in unconventional ways. The theoretical principle behind an invisibility cloak involves bending light around an object, much like water flowing around a smooth rock in a stream, so that the light continues on its path uninterrupted, making the object behind it completely undetectable. In 2006, researchers used metamaterials to successfully cloak a small object from microwaves, a proof of concept that, while far from rendering a person invisible, validated the underlying physics. It is a breathtaking thought that ancient storytellers, through their tales of magical caps and cloaks, might have intuitively grasped a technological concept that would take millennia for modern science to actually achieve. These legends stand as a powerful testament to the human capacity to imagine a technological future long before the tools to build it exist. While we lack a physical cloak from antiquity, the artifacts we do have are the texts themselves. Ancient manuscripts and epic poems are the vessels that carried these ideas through time. The detailed description of Hades's cap in the shield of Heracles, or the frequent appearance of invisibility garments in the compiled tales of the Arabian Nights, are themselves historical artifacts of this technological dreaming. Furthermore, we can look to ancient objects that played with perception in other ways. The reflective properties of highly polished bronze shields or obsidian mirrors, used for signaling or divination, demonstrate an active engagement with light manipulation. In a more modern context, the development of military stealth technology serves as a direct parallel to these ancient desires. The coating of aircraft in radar-absorbent materials and the design of angular surfaces to deflect radar waves are methods of achieving a form of invisibility, not to the human eye but to electronic senses. This pursuit shows that the core ambition of the myth, to move undetected, remains a driving force in the highest echelons of technological research and defense. The Cloak of Invisibility, therefore, is far more than a child's fantasy or a simple plot device. It is a profound symbol that encourages us to reconsider the boundaries between ancient imagination and modern innovation. These stories challenge us to ask whether the dream of invisibility was always, in some way, a premonition. they suggest that the human mind has a unique ability to conceptualize advanced technologies through the language of myth and magic long before the scientific principles are formally understood. This legend is not about a literal garment, but about the timeless desire to control our environment and our visibility within it, whether for protection, for power, or for privacy. It represents the ultimate fusion of material science and human aspiration, a dream woven from the threads of light itself that continues to inspire scientists and storytellers alike to push the limits of what is possible. This universal human drive to see beyond our immediate senses, to pull back the curtain of time and space, finds one of its most enduring expressions in the ancient art of scrying. Unlike the legendary weapons or flying machines we've explored, this technology is deeply introspective, a tool not for conquering the external world, but for mapping the vast and uncharted territories within the human mind. Scrying at its core is the practice of gazing into a reflective or translucent surface, be it a pool of dark water, a polished obsidian mirror, a crystal ball, or a sheet of polished metal, until the conscious mind begins to quiet and the subconscious projects images, symbols, and narratives onto the blank canvas. This was never considered mere fortune-telling. It was a sophisticated ritual technology of divination, a formalized method for seeking guidance, diagnosing illness, or uncovering hidden truths, practiced with reverence from the palaces of Egyptian pharaohs to the studies of Renaissance magi. The physical artifacts left behind by this practice are as hauntingly beautiful as they are revealing. Among the most striking are the scrying mirrors of the Aztec and Maya civilizations, meticulously crafted from discs of obsidian, a volcanic glass that cools into a deep, impenetrable black. When polished to a high sheen, these mirrors do not offer a clear reflection like modern glass. Instead, they create a kind of depthless void, a dark portal that seems to swallow light and invite the gaze to fall into infinity. Examples of these obsidian mirrors have been found in archaeological contexts, often associated with high-status individuals or priests, and were later collected by European figures like the Elizabethan mystic John Dee, who believed they could be used to communicate with angelic beings. Similarly, in ancient Egypt, texts describe the use of bowls filled with ink or oil for lechonomancy, a form of scrying where the diviner would interpret the play of light on the dark, liquid surface. These were not casual superstitions but required years of training to interpret the often ambiguous and symbolic visions that arose, a skilled profession that blended intuition with a deep knowledge of cultural and spiritual symbolism. So what is actually happening when a person gazes into these surfaces and perceives visions? Modern psychology offers a compelling explanation that demystifies the practice without diminishing its fascinating power. Scrying is now understood as a powerful tool for accessing the subconscious mind. The sustained, unfocused gaze into a featureless field induces a mild trance state, a bridge between waking consciousness and dreaming known as hypnagogia. In this state, the brain's pattern recognition machinery, which is hardwired to find meaning in chaos, becomes hyperactive. It begins to project internal thoughts, fears, hopes, and memories onto the blank slate, much like we see shapes in clouds or the man in the moon. The scrying surface acts as a psychological trigger, facilitating a controlled waking dream. This process of externalizing internal content can be incredibly therapeutic, a way to bypass the critical, analytical conscious mind and allow deeper wisdom and creative solutions to emerge. In this light, the ancient scryer was an early psychologist, leveraging an understanding of perception and cognition to explore the inner self. Beyond psychology, there is also a fascinating optical component to the practice that ancient practitioners would have observed empirically. The play of light on a curved crystal ball or the rippling surface of water in a dark bowl can create very real physical distortions, refractions, and reflections. A flickering candle flame nearby, a passing cloud, or even the scryer's own minute-eye movements can cause shapes and patterns to form and shift in the medium. An experienced diviner would learn to read these light-based phenomena as a sailor reads the waves or a farmer reads the sky, integrating them into their interpretations. This intersection of optics and intuition shows that scrying was a truly multidisciplinary practice, one that required an attentive eye for the subtle behaviors of light and a deep understanding of the symbolic language of the human psyche. It was a technology of perception in the truest sense, enhancing inner vision by mastering the external conditions that could influence it. The legacy of the speculum, or scrying mirror, is far more than a historical curiosity. Its principles echo in our most modern technologies. The desire to create a surface that can show us distant events or potential futures is the very essence of the television screen, the computer monitor, and the smartphone display. We now use glass surfaces not to gaze into our subconscious, but to connect with people across the globe, access the entirety of human knowledge, and simulate future scenarios. In a way, we have achieved the dream of scrying on a mass scale, but through digital code and electronic pixels rather than psychic projection. The practice reminds us that every tool we create, from the simplest polished stone to the most complex supercomputer, is ultimately an extension of a fundamental human desire to see more, to know more, and to transcend our natural limitations. This ancient art of seeking visions in a glass or a pool of water demonstrates that the line between technology and magic has always been thin, defined not by the tool itself, but by our understanding of how it works and our intention in using it. Leaving behind the introspective visions of the scrying mirror, we ascend to a legend of majestic, airborne authority, the flying throne of King Solomon. This is not a tale of personal flight, but of sovereign mobility, a concept described in rich detail within both Jewish and Islamic traditions. In the Quran and in texts like the Targum Sheni, Solomon's throne is presented as a breathtaking marvel. It was said to be constructed from the finest sandalwood and ivory, inlaid with gold and precious jewels, but its true wonder was its mode of conveyance. The throne itself did not fly, rather, it was transported through the air at the king's command. Some accounts describe it being borne aloft by the wind itself, obedient to Solomon's God-given authority over the natural world. Other, more elaborate versions speak of it being carried by a host of powerful spirits or jinn, who would lift the entire platform, throne, retinue, and all, and carry it vast distances at incredible speed. This allowed the wise king to swiftly travel the length and breadth of his expansive kingdom, dispensing justice, overseeing construction, and surveying his lands with an omniscient, God's eye view that cemented his reputation as the ultimate ruler. When we move beyond the supernatural framing, the legend invites a fascinating question. Could this story be a mythological interpretation of a very real, albeit more primitive, technology for elevated travel? One compelling interpretation suggests the flying throne might describe an early, and now lost, form of sophisticated palanquin or litter system, engineered for astonishing speed and smoothness across difficult terrain. Imagine a massive, wheeled platform, perhaps pulled by the fastest horses or mules available, along a network of well-maintained royal roads. To observers on the ground, seeing this magnificent, canopied structure moving swiftly across the landscape with its escort might have seemed like it was gliding just above the earth, especially if viewed from a distance or through dust and heat haze. Another, more speculative theory proposes it could represent knowledge of early gliding or wind-powered land sailing. The ancient Egyptians were known to use sails on their chariots to harness the desert winds for added speed. A large, throne-mounted sail on a flat, dry plain like those in the Middle East could theoretically generate significant force, creating the illusion of flying for those witnessing it rush past. These explanations ground the legend in practical human innovation, suggesting that Solomon's flight was a product of exceptional engineering and logistics, exaggerated into miracle over centuries of retelling. The evidence for these theories, while not physical, is found in the intricate details of the textual and artistic record. Persian and Mughal miniatures from later centuries often depict Solomon's throne not as a simple chair, but as an elaborate, multi-tiered platform, often shown floating amidst clouds or carried by a multitude of figures with a purposeful, aerodynamic energy. These artistic interpretations, while not contemporary, show how the legend was visualized and taken seriously as a concept of majestic transport. The descriptions in the texts themselves are surprisingly consistent in their focus on the throne's material composition and its function as a mobile command center, details that feel more technological than purely magical. It is described as having a specific size, being able to carry a certain number of people, and being operable by a command, all hallmarks of a device, however embellished the description may be. This consistency across cultures and centuries suggests a shared fascination with the idea of a technology that could grant a leader ultimate mobility and perspective. Beyond the literal or mechanical interpretations, the flying throne operates on a powerful metaphorical level that reveals deep truths about leadership and control. The throne's ability to lift the ruler high above his subjects is a potent symbol of elevated perspective, of the need for a leader to rise above the petty concerns of the moment to see the bigger picture and understand the interconnectedness of their domain. Its speed represents the ideal of swift justice and efficient administration, the ability to respond to crises anywhere in the kingdom without delay. Most importantly, the very fact that it is a throne that flies is significant. It is not a personal flying machine, it is the seat of power itself, mobile and untethered. This symbolizes a revolutionary idea that authority is not rooted to a single palace or city, but can be dynamically projected across the entire realm, making the presence of the ruler felt everywhere simultaneously. This concept of pervasive, mobile authority is incredibly relevant today, in an age where leaders use technology not to physically fly, but to project their influence instantaneously through digital media and global communications networks, overseeing modern kingdoms from screens and command centers. Ultimately, the legend of Solomon's flying throne is less about the mechanics of aviation and more about the timeless human desire to conquer the limitations of geography and perception. It represents a dream of perfect governance made possible by perfect mobility, a world where a wise leader can see everything and be anywhere they are needed. This dream has driven technological innovation for centuries, from the development of the telegraph and the railroad to the invention of the airplane and the internet, all tools designed to shrink distance and accelerate the exercise of power. The story challenges us to consider how our own leaders use technology to survey and control, and what the modern equivalents of that divine, aerial perspective might be. It is an enduring reminder that the greatest technologies are often those that expand our reach and deepen our understanding, allowing us to rule not through force but through wisdom and presence. And just as this legendary throne used the very wind for its propulsion, our next exploration turns to a technology that sought to capture and tame a different elemental force, not for movement, but for the eternal defiance of darkness itself. Imagine a world where the darkness of a sealed tomb, untouched for centuries, is suddenly pierced by a gentle, unwavering flame, a light that has been burning steadily since the day the chamber was sealed. This is the captivating promise of the everlasting lamp, a legend that has flickered at the edges of history for millennia. The Greek essayist Plutarch wrote of a lamp that burned above the door of a temple to Jupiter Ammon, a flame that supposedly could not be extinguished by wind or rain. Similarly, early Christian historians like St. Augustine described lamps found in ancient tombs that continued to shine, their light snuffed out only when intruders violated the sacred space, often with disastrous consequences. These weren't isolated tales. Reports of these perpetual lights surface in accounts from across the ancient world, from the crypts of Rome to the temples of India, suggesting a widespread and persistent belief in a technology that could defy one of nature's most fundamental laws, the need for fuel. So what could these lamps possibly have been? If they weren't pure fantasy, they must have been powered by something. One of the most plausible theories points to the clever use of phosphorescent materials. Certain natural compounds like barium sulfide can absorb light energy and then slowly release it over a long period as a soft, eerie glow. If ancient priests or engineers had discovered how to create a paint or coating from such materials and applied it to the inside of a lamp or a sacred symbol, it could create the illusion of a constant, fuel-less light for many years after being charged by sunlight or torchlight. A more dramatic, though less likely, hypothesis involves low-level nuclear reactions. Could ancient civilizations have stumbled upon naturally radioactive isotopes or minerals and housed them in containers that would cause the air around them to ionize and produce a faint, continuous light? While there's no evidence they understood radioactivity, the presence of radioactive rocks in certain ancient mining areas leaves a tiny door open for speculation. The most ingenious explanation, however, involves simple yet brilliant mechanical trickery. Some have proposed the lamps were connected via hidden, airtight pipes to a remote fuel source, like an underground oil reservoir designed to feed the wick for an incredibly long time. When a tomb robber broke the seal of the chamber or severed this hidden connection, the airflow would change and the flame would instantly die, creating the legend that the light was extinguished by the sacrilege itself. The search for physical evidence of these lamps has been as elusive as the flames themselves, but not without its intriguing leads. For centuries, explorers and antiquarians reported seeing these lights in places like the Roman catacombs, though no such lamp has ever been recovered and presented for modern analysis. What we do have are the countless ordinary oil lamps found in archaeological sites across the Mediterranean and the Middle East. The design of these lamps evolved over centuries, showing a sophisticated understanding of wick materials, airflow, and fuel efficiency. Some were crafted with multiple spouts for longer burn times, while others used complex, enclosed designs to prevent evaporation. These real artifacts demonstrate that ancient cultures were masterful illuminators, pushing the limits of the technology available to them. Furthermore, the discovery of the Baghdad battery opens a tantalizing possibility. If ancient peoples understood the principles of electrochemistry well enough to generate a small electrical charge, could they have developed a form of primitive electroluminescence? While a giant leap, it's not entirely outside the realm of imagination that they could have created a glowing effect through some lost chemical or electrical process that we have yet to rediscover. The true power of the everlasting lamp legend is not in its potential reality, but in the profound questions it raises about energy and innovation. On one level, it represents humanity's oldest and most fundamental struggle, to push back the night and achieve mastery over our environment. The desire for a light that never dies is a powerful metaphor for knowledge, hope, and the human spirit itself. On a more practical level, the myth directly challenges a cornerstone of modern physics. the law of energy conservation, which states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. A lamp that burns forever with no added fuel would be a perpetual motion machine, an impossibility according to our current understanding. Yet, the persistence of this story pushes us to wonder if there might be pathways to energy that we have overlooked, or if ancient cultures discovered ways to tap into natural, slow-release energy sources in a manner we've yet to replicate. In this way, the everlasting lamp is more than a relic of superstition. It is a beacon that continues to inspire scientists and engineers in the field of sustainable energy, driving the quest for longer-lasting batteries, more efficient LEDs, and ways to harness the natural energy of the planet. It reminds us that the line between myth and scientific aspiration is often illuminated by the same timeless dream of a light that never fades. This fascination with capturing time and preserving it for the future brings us to a concept that feels almost like a legend in the making: the clock of the long now. Unlike the technologies we've explored that were lost to antiquity, this is a modern project with its roots planted firmly in the future. Yet it is directly inspired by the same ancient yearning that drove builders of stone circles and creators of elaborate calendars. The brainchild of computer scientist Danny Hillis, the Clock of the Long Now is a monumental mechanical timepiece designed to operate with minimal human intervention for 10,000 years. Its purpose is profound: to encourage long-term thinking on a civilization scale, to force us to consider the consequences of our actions not just for the next quarter or the next election cycle, but for the next 100 generations. It is a physical symbol, a ticking monument to the idea that our greatest responsibility is to be good ancestors. While the Clock of the Long Now is a contemporary endeavor, its underlying philosophy resonates deeply with the ambitions of ancient timekeepers. Legends from various cultures speak of mythical clocks or celestial engines built to track vast cycles of time. The idea that earlier civilizations might have attempted to create their own clocks of the long now is not far-fetched when we examine the artifacts they left behind. Take, for instance, the great stone circles like Stonehenge. While not a clock in the mechanical sense, it functions as a massive, permanent astronomical computer. Its carefully aligned heel stones and lintels mark the solstices and equinoxes with breathtaking precision, designed to track the slow precession of the seasons across centuries. Similarly, the intricate Mayan calendar system was a masterpiece of long-term timekeeping. It wasn't just a way to mark days. It wove together multiple overlapping cycles, including the sacred Tzolk'in, the solar hub, and the vast long count calendar, which measured time in units of over 5,000 years. These structures and systems were not built for one person's lifetime. They were projects that required planning, resources, and knowledge that would only benefit generations far in the future. They are proof that the impulse to build for the long term is a fundamental part of the human story. The engineering behind a clock meant to last 10 millennia is a puzzle that forces a complete rethinking of durability and design. The team behind the Clock of the Long Now is building it inside a mountain in Texas, protecting it from the elements and human interference. It will be powered by mechanical energy harvested from the natural temperature differences between day and night at the site, and it will tell time through a complex, elegant system of gears and torsion pendulums designed for ultra-low wear. Its face is designed to be interpreted by future civilizations who may not share our language or numerical systems. It will show the year, the positions of the sun and moon, and even the slow precession of the stars. Every material, every bearing, every calculation is made with one goal: to keep ticking long after our current civilizations have faded into history. This project is a direct challenge to our throwaway culture, a bold statement that technology can and should be built to last, to serve as a bridge between the deep past and the distant future. The ultimate power of this legend, both ancient and modern, is the way it reshapes our perspective. A society that builds calendars measuring 5,000-year cycles or clocks for 10,000 years is a society that thinks in terms of legacy, sustainability, and deep responsibility. It forces us to confront questions we often avoid. What will the world look like in 1,000 years? What knowledge must we preserve to ensure that future generations can understand and maintain the technologies we leave behind? The clock of the long now and the ancient structures that inspired its ethos are more than just timekeeping devices. They are the ultimate technology of memory. They are a deliberate physical effort to fight what is known as the shifting baseline syndrome, where each generation accepts the world it is born into as normal, slowly forgetting what came before and failing to envision what could come after. By creating a heartbeat that will outlive nations and languages, these projects attempt to tether humanity to a continuous timeline, reminding us that we are not the culmination of history, but a single chapter in a story that is still being written. From the grand civilization-scale vision of a 10,000-year clock, we now narrow our focus to a single, legendary object of personal protection, one that represents the pinnacle of defensive technology fused with the raw power of psychological terror, the Aegis of Zeus. In the vivid tapestry of Greek mythology, few artifacts carry the same weight of divine authority and battlefield dominance. The Aegis was not merely a piece of armor, it was a symbol of unassailable power, most famously wielded by Zeus, the king of the gods, and his daughter Athena, the goddess of strategic warfare. Descriptions vary, but it is often portrayed as a fearsome shield or a goatskin breastplate, fringed with golden tassels and bearing the most terrifying visage imaginable, the severed head of the Gorgon Medusa. This was not just a defensive tool, it was an active weapon. In the heat of battle, the mere sight of the Aegis with Medusa's serpent-haired, wide-eyed stare was said to instill such paralyzing fear in enemies that they would literally turn to stone, frozen in their tracks. This brilliant combination of physical defense and psychological warfare made it the ultimate instrument of control, a weapon that could win a conflict before a single blow was even struck. When we peel back the layers of divine myth, the legend of the Aegis invites us to consider the very real and sophisticated advancements in ancient military technology that may have inspired it. One compelling theory suggests that the petrifying effect of the Aegis could be rooted in the practical use of highly polished metals. Imagine a warrior, perhaps a general or a champion, carrying a large shield made not of wood and leather, but of bronze that had been buffed to a mirror-like finish. On a bright Mediterranean day, the sun glinting off this immense, moving reflector could be utterly blinding to an opposing force, creating a dazzling, disorienting effect that would halt an advance as effectively as any physical barrier. This would be a form of early directed energy weapon, using reflected sunlight as a tactical advantage. Another, more speculative idea proposes that the Aegis could represent an early understanding of composite armor. The description of it being made of goatskin might hint at layers of leather, perhaps treated and hardened, combined with metal plates, a primitive form of what we now know as layered ballistic protection designed to dissipate the force of an impact. The Gorgon's head mounted at its center could have served a very practical purpose, a reinforced boss designed to deflect spear points and sword blows away from the wielder's body. While the search for a physical Aegis has proven as fruitless as the quest for Atlantis, we are left with a rich and detailed visual record that brings the legend to life. The most compelling artifacts are the countless depictions on ancient Greek pottery, sculpture, and coinage. On a beautiful black figure amphora from the 6th century BCE, you might see Athena charging into battle, her arm thrust forward, the unmistakable outline of the Aegis with its serpentine fringe and Gorgonean striking fear into her foes. These artistic representations are remarkably consistent in their iconography, showing that the Aegis was a standardized and recognizable symbol of divine power and protection across the Greek world. Sculptures like the majestic statue of Athena Parthenos that once stood in the Parthenon, described by historians as being over 30 feet tall, showed the goddess wearing the Aegis as a cape. These are not mere fantasies. They are cultural artifacts that confirm the Aegis's central role in the ancient Greek understanding of warfare, authority, and the favor of the gods. They prove that while the object itself may be mythological, its impact on the culture, its value as a symbol, was absolutely real. The true, enduring power of the Aegis, however, lies in its profound and lasting symbolism. It represents the evolution of warfare beyond simple brute force into the realm of the mind. The ancient Greeks, through this myth, demonstrated a sophisticated understanding that the most effective weapon is often fear itself. The ability to demoralize an enemy, to break their will to fight, is a force multiplier that has been a cornerstone of military strategy throughout history, from the terrifying war elephants of Hannibal to the psychological operations of modern armies. The Aegis is the ultimate metaphor for this concept. Furthermore, its specific association with Athena is critically important. She was not a mindless god of war like Ares. She was the deity of strategic warfare, wisdom, and cunning. The Aegis, therefore, is not just a tool of destruction. It is an instrument of strategic dominance. It symbolizes the idea that true protection comes from a combination of strength, superior technology, and brilliant tactics. This legendary artifact challenges us to see ancient myths not as silly stories, but as complex narratives that encode very real human experiences, innovations, and insights into the nature of power and conflict. It was a symbol that protected not just the body, but the very idea of civilization itself. From the divine protection of the Aegis, we shift our focus to a symbol not of defense, but of restoration, a legendary object that represents humanity's oldest and most noble battle against disease and decay. The Rod of Asclepius, a simple staff entwined by a single serpent, is one of the most recognized symbols in the world, yet its origins reach back into a fascinating blend of myth, medicine, and meticulous observation of the natural world. In Greek mythology, Asclepius was the son of Apollo, trained in the art of healing by the wise centaur Chiron, until his skill became so profound that he could not only cure the sick but also resurrect the dead. This godlike power eventually drew the wrath of Zeus, who feared Asclepius would upset the natural order of life and death, and struck him down with a thunderbolt. But his legacy endured through his symbol, which came to represent the very essence of the healing arts, a promise of renewal and hope that has transcended its mythological roots to become the universal emblem of medicine itself. The power of this symbol likely stems from a deep, ancient understanding of the world that was both practical and spiritual. One compelling theory links the serpent to a very real and positive medical phenomenon. In the ancient world, certain snakes, like the Aesculapian rat snake, were non-venomous and common around human settlements where they controlled disease-carrying rodents. Their presence was associated with health and cleanliness. Furthermore, the act of a snake shedding its skin was powerfully symbolic of rebirth, renewal, and regeneration, a perfect metaphor for the goal of any physician. Another, more direct theory connects the symbol to early parasitic medicine. The guinea worm, a painful parasite that would emerge slowly from a victim's skin, was treated by the careful, ancient method of winding the living worm around a small stick to extract it over days without breaking it. This successful, hands-on medical procedure requiring a steady hand and a small rod could have easily become synonymous with healing and been ritualized into a powerful symbol. These explanations ground the rod not in magic, but in the empirical, observational science of the ancient world, where a keen eye for nature's patterns led to both practical treatments and powerful cultural icons. The tangible evidence for this deep medical tradition is not found in a single magical rod, but in the extensive archaeological remains of the Asclepia, the healing temples dedicated to the god Asclepius. These were not merely places of prayer, they were sophisticated sanatoriums that blended spiritual belief with what we would now recognize as early holistic medicine. Patients would undergo a process called incubation, where they would sleep in a special hall within the temple precinct. In their dreams, the god Asclepius was believed to appear to them, offering a diagnosis or a prescription for their ailment. Priests would then interpret these dreams and administer treatments. The tools found at these sites reveal a startlingly advanced approach. Archaeologists have uncovered intricate bronze surgical instruments, scalpels, forceps, hooks, and probes that show a sophisticated knowledge of anatomy and surgical procedure. These were places where the line between faith healing and practical medicine was beautifully blurred. Treatments included prescribed diets, herbal remedies, therapeutic baths, and even early forms of psychotherapy, as the ritual and the peaceful environment itself worked to calm the mind and promote the body's own healing processes. The rod, therefore, represents not a single artifact but an entire system of care. This ancient symbol's journey into the modern world is a testament to its enduring power. While the similar caduceus, a staff with two snakes and wings, associated with the god Hermes, is often mistakenly used, particularly in the United States, the true rod of Asclepius with its single serpent remains the official symbol of prestigious medical organizations like the World Health Organization. This is no accident of history. It is a conscious choice to connect the modern practice of medicine to an ancient ethos of healing, wisdom, and ethical commitment. The rod reminds every doctor and nurse that their profession is part of a lineage that stretches back millennia, a vocation dedicated to the preservation of life above all else. It serves as a constant ethical anchor in a field of rapidly evolving technology, symbolizing the core humanistic principle that medicine must always be practiced with wisdom, care, and a reverence for the intricate mystery of life itself. This profound link between an ancient myth and a modern ethical code shows how deeply our technological pursuits are shaped by the stories we tell about our purpose and our past. And just as the rod of Asclepius symbolizes the application of knowledge to heal the human body, our next exploration turns to a legendary device that applied knowledge to a different kind of problem, the formidable task of calculation itself. But long before the silicon chip or the mechanical calculator, humanity was already dreaming of machines that could tame the infinite complexity of mathematics. Across countless cultures, myths speak of divine or supernatural calculating devices, tools bestowed upon wise men and deities to measure the heavens, govern fate, and unlock the secrets of the universe. In the ancient Sanskrit texts of India, for instance, the gods are described using a yantra, a complex geometrical diagram or machine for astronomical predictions. Chinese legends tell of the mythical emperor Yu receiving a magical Luo Shu square from a turtle emerging from the Yellow River, a 3x3 grid of numbers whose rows, columns, and diagonals all sum to the same value, forming the sacred basis for numerology, feng shui, and advanced mathematical arts. These were not mere counting tools, they were portrayed as oracles of order, capable of processing information about reality itself in ways that seemed almost miraculous. This mythological dream finds its most tangible and enduring expression in a real-world object so successful that its basic design remained unchanged for millennia, the humble abacus. While we all recognize the classic frame with beads sliding on wires, this device represents a revolutionary leap in cognitive technology. It externalized calculation, moving it from the fragile and limited space of human working memory into the physical world. With an abacus, a skilled operator could perform complex addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division at speeds that rivaled and sometimes surpassed a person using pen and paper for centuries to come. But the legends suggest something even more profound. Some myths, particularly those intertwined with sacred geometry and astrology, hint at abacus-like devices with multiple tiers or unusual configurations, capable of tracking planetary movements or even encoding secret messages through numerical ciphers. Imagine an abacus where each row didn't represent a decimal place, but a different celestial body, its beads tracking positions within an intricate cosmic clockwork. This idea of a specialized, sophisticated calculation engine is what transforms the simple abacus from a counting tool into a potential legend of a lost computational science. The archaeological record, while not yielding a mythical abacus of the gods, provides stunning evidence of our ancestors' profound mathematical sophistication, which would have been the fertile ground for such legends to grow. We have the Salamis tablet, a massive marble counting board from ancient Greece dating back to 300 BCE, its surface marked with parallel lines for placing and moving counting stones. We have the intricate Inca quipu, a system of knotted cords that was almost certainly a complex, three-dimensional recording device for storing numerical data, and perhaps even narrative information, in a format we are still struggling to fully decipher. Perhaps most telling are the ancient mathematical texts themselves. The Babylonian clay tablet known as Plimpton 322, for example, contains a table of Pythagorean triples, sets of three whole numbers that perfectly describe the sides of a right triangle dating back nearly 4,000 years, proving a deep understanding of geometric principles long before the Greeks formalized them. These artifacts are the real-world foundations of the myth. They show us that the human mind was more than capable of conceiving of advanced calculation. The only thing missing was the specific mechanical implementation. The true power of these legends and their physical counterparts is how perfectly they foreshadow our own technological journey. The abacus is, in essence, a manual computer. Its beads are its memory registers. The algorithm is the set of rules the operator follows to move them. In this way, the ancient human working with a counting board was engaging in the same fundamental process as a modern programmer, creating a step-by-step procedure to manipulate stored data and produce a desired result. This direct lineage is why the abacus is often cited as one of the earliest precursors to the modern computer. It represents the first great step in offloading cognitive labor onto a machine, a principle that drives everything from the difference engine to the smartphone in your pocket. These ancient calculation myths, therefore, are not about lost super technologies, but about a lost potential, a clear vision of where this tool could lead. They represent the human intuition that the language of mathematics could be mechanized, that the universe could be understood not just through philosophy, but through computation. This relentless drive to calculate, to measure, and to model reality is the unbroken thread that connects the sacred number squares of emperors to the algorithms that now govern our digital world. Of all the cautions whispered down through the ages, few are as vivid or as chilling as the story of King Midas. This is not a legend of a lost weapon or a forgotten energy source. but a parable about a power so seductive it becomes a curse, the Midas Touch. As told by the ancient Romans like Ovid, Midas was a king who, for a favor granted to the god Dionysus, was given one wish. He asked that anything he touched would turn to gold. His delight was immediate and overwhelming as he transformed stones and twigs into gleaming treasure. But his triumph swiftly curdled into horror when he discovered his food, his water, and most tragically, his own daughter, solidified into cold, lifeless gold at his caress. This story, on its surface, is a powerful moral lesson about the dangers of greed and the emptiness of valuing wealth above all else. It's a warning that the thing we desire most might ultimately isolate and destroy us, a theme that resonates as powerfully in our modern world of speculative finance and relentless consumerism as it did in an ancient Greek court. Yet, as with so many myths, we have to ask if this stark morality tale could have been inspired by a kernel of tangible, technological truth. Could the Midas Touch be a distorted memory of an ancient metallurgical breakthrough? One compelling theory suggests it might be a folk memory of the discovery of a technique for mercury gilding, a sophisticated chemical process that would have seemed like magic. This method, which was certainly known to the Romans and likely earlier cultures, involves dissolving gold in mercury to create a thick, paste-like amalgam. This paste could be brushed onto objects made of bronze or other base metals. When heated over a fire, the mercury would vaporize, a dangerous and mesmerizing process as the toxic fumes carried away, leaving behind a perfect, thin, and brilliantly shiny layer of pure gold bonded to the surface. To an observer who didn't understand the chemistry, the transformation of a dull bronze statue into a radiant golden idol through the touch of fire and a mysterious paste would have been utterly miraculous, easily explained as a divine or cursed power. This theory is powerfully supported by a wealth of archaeological evidence. We are not lacking for artifacts that demonstrate this stunning, Midas-like transformation. From the exquisite death masks of Mycenaean kings to the gilded statues that adorned Roman temples, ancient artisans mastered the art of making the common appear precious. The famous golden rhyton from Persia or the elaborate gilded chariot from the Thracian tombs are testaments to this skill. These weren't solid gold that would have been prohibitively expensive and heavy. They were masterworks of applied science, using chemistry and physics to create a magnificent illusion of wealth and power. The legend, then, might not be about a king who literally created gold, but about a culture that had learned to manipulate it so effectively that they could, in a very real sense, bestow the appearance of gold upon anything they wished. The touch was not a king's hand, but the skilled hand of an artisan applying a volatile, transformative chemical mixture. This interpretation adds a profound new layer to the myth's ethical warning. It's not just a simple fable against greed. It's a specific caution about the hidden dangers and compromises inherent in technology itself. The process of mercury gilding is incredibly hazardous. The vapors released during heating are highly toxic, leading to neurological damage and death, a steep price paid for achieving that golden sheen. The myth, in this light, becomes a metaphor for the unintended consequences of innovation. King Midas's golden touch didn't just bring him isolation, it brought death as he could no longer eat or drink. Similarly, the pursuit of a technology that creates immense surface wealth can often poison the wellspring of what truly sustains us: our health, our environment, our humanity. The legend reminds us that every transformative technology carries a cost, and the pursuit of material gain without wisdom and foresight can leave us surrounded by beautiful, lifeless gold, yet starving for what really matters. This deep ethical conflict between outward appearance and inner value, between wealth and well-being, sets the stage for a legend that explores a completely different kind of connection. Now, let's shift our focus from the transformative power of material wealth to a far more profound and ancient form of alchemy, the legendary ability to understand the language of animals. This is a dream that transcends a single culture, appearing in the foundational texts of virtually every civilization on Earth. In the Abrahamic traditions, King Solomon was said to possess a divine ring that granted him not only command over jinn, but also the power to understand the speech of birds, insects, and beasts, allowing him to learn the secrets of the natural world. Celtic myths are filled with druids who could converse with the creatures of the forest, while indigenous stories from every continent tell of shamans and heroes who served as interpreters between the human and animal kingdoms. Even our modern folklore keeps this idea alive with characters like Dr. Dolittle, a whimsical figure whose adventures are built upon this timeless human yearning. These aren't just charming fables, they represent a deep-seated and universal desire to cross the ultimate communicative barrier, to finally understand the other intelligent life with which we share our planet. When we look past the magical veneer of these stories, we begin to see the outlines of a very real and practical technology, a sophisticated science of interspecies communication based on millennia of meticulous observation. The legends likely encode the profound, hard-won knowledge of early animal husbandry. The first person to effectively train a horse, for instance, didn't use magic. They used an intimate understanding of the animal's body language, vocalizations, and behavior. They learned to read the flick of an ear, the tension in a flank, or the specific whinny that signaled alarm versus hunger. This deep observational skill, passed down through generations, would have seemed like a form of mystical communication to outsiders. Similarly, the success of ancient falconers depended on a complex, unspoken language of gestures, signals, and rewards to partner with a wild raptor. These were the first bioacousticians and behavioral ecologists, developing a working technology of coexistence and cooperation that was absolutely essential for human survival and advancement. The potential artifacts of this technology are not necessarily devices, but rather the tools and symbols that facilitated this deep connection. We might consider the intricate bird whistles and calls carved from wood or bone by ancient hunters to mimic and lure their prey. These weren't just noisemakers, they were precise instruments based on careful acoustic study. The ceremonial masks and regalia worn by shamans in rituals, often adorned with feathers, fur, and claws, can be seen as symbolic interfaces, a technology of empathy and embodiment designed to help the wearer psychologically cross the boundary into the animal's world of perception. Even the ancient cave paintings of Lascaux and Chauvet, with their stunningly accurate depictions of animal movement and behavior, stand as artifacts of this deep observation. They are not just hunting manuals, they are testaments to a sacred, studied relationship, a form of reverence that comes from spending a lifetime watching and learning the ways of another creature. This ancient quest finds its most exciting modern expression not in magic rings, but in the cutting-edge fields of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Today's scientists are essentially pursuing the same goal as the Legend of Solomon, but with digital tools. Researchers are deploying advanced algorithms to analyze the complex vocalizations of species like sperm whales, whose clicking codas appear to form a sophisticated language. By using pattern recognition software to parse thousands of hours of recordings, we are inching closer to creating a Google Translate for whales. In the realm of ecology, bioacoustic monitoring networks are being used to listen to entire ecosystems, using the sounds of animals as data to assess biodiversity and ecosystem health. We are even developing AI that can interpret the emotional states of domesticated animals like dogs through their barks and growls. This modern technology is the direct descendant of the ancient animal whisperer's skill. It is simply a new, powerful set of tools applied to humanity's oldest conversational ambition. The enduring power of the animal language legend lies in what it reveals about our own place in the natural world. It speaks to a deep, ecological intuition that we are not separate from nature, but a part of a vast, interconnected web of communication we are only beginning to perceive. These stories encourage a mindset of humility and curiosity, reminding us that intelligence is not a monologue spoken only by humans, but a complex chorus of countless different voices. The quest to understand animal communication is, at its heart, a quest to better understand ourselves and our responsibilities within the biosphere. It challenges the arrogant notion that we are the only species worth listening to and inspires a future where technology doesn't further isolate us from nature, but helps us reintegrate into the conversation, finally granting us the wisdom to hear the world speaking all around us. And from the dream of instantaneous travel woven into legend, we now turn to a technology that sought to conquer a different frontier entirely, not the vastness of physical space, but the intricate landscape of the human mind. The concept of memory palaces, or the method of loci, stands as one of the most powerful and enduring cognitive technologies ever devised, a mental architecture for storing information that transformed the art of memory long before the invention of writing could serve as a reliable external hard drive. This technique is most famously attributed to the ancient Greek poet Simonides of Chios, who, according to legend, was the sole survivor of a catastrophic banquet hall collapse. He was able to identify the mangled bodies of the victims not by their faces, but by recalling exactly where each guest had been sitting around the table. This horrific event allegedly revealed to him the fundamental principle that memory is deeply spatial and emotional. To remember something, you simply place a vivid image representing that information into a specific location within a familiar mental space, like a room in your childhood home or a path through a public square. To recall it, you just take a walk through that space in your mind, retrieving the images you left there. This wasn't just a party trick. For centuries, it was the primary tool for orators, scholars, and statesmen to hold vast amounts of information, entire speeches, legal codes, philosophical treatises perfectly in mind. The artifacts of this mental technology are not physical objects, but the intricate texts and architectural principles that guided its practice. The most crucial of these is the Rhetorica ad Hiernium, a Roman text from the 1st century BC that provides the most complete ancient manual on the method. It offers detailed instructions on how to construct these imaginary palaces, emphasizing that the loci, or locations, must be chosen from a real, well-known place to provide a solid scaffold, and that the images placed there must be exceptionally vivid, even bizarre, to stick in the mind. A memory of a legal case about an inheritance might involve placing a vivid image of a bloody sword in the atrium of your mental villa. The sheer act of creating these elaborate mental constructs was itself a form of deep cognitive processing, forcing the user to engage with the material on a creative level that greatly enhanced retention. Beyond texts, we can see the legacy of this method in the very design of real-world spaces. The layout of Gothic cathedrals with their distinct chapels, statues, and stained glass windows depicting specific stories can be seen as a physical memory palace, designed to guide a largely illiterate congregation through the key narratives and doctrines of their faith simply by walking through the building. What makes this ancient technique so remarkable is how perfectly it aligns with our modern understanding of neuroscience. Our brains are exceptionally good at remembering images and spatial relationships, a trait likely evolved for navigation and survival. The method of Los brilliantly hijacks these primal, powerful neural pathways for the purpose of storing abstract information. The act of walking through a mental palace likely engages the hippocampus, the brain's central hub for both memory and spatial navigation, creating a much stronger and more durable memory trace than simple rote repetition. Modern studies have consistently proven its effectiveness. Memory athletes who compete to memorize the order of shuffled decks of cards or thousands of binary digits almost universally rely on sophisticated versions of this ancient Greek technique. This isn't just a historical curiosity, it's a cognitive tool that remains arguably the most powerful mnemonic device ever discovered, validated by 2,000 years of practice and now by fMRI scans. The legend of the Memory Palace, therefore, is a testament to a different kind of lost technology, not one of gears and levers, but of untapped mental software. It represents a peak in the internalization of knowledge, a time when the human mind itself was the primary repository of culture, law, and history. Its gradual decline with the widespread adoption of printing and cheap paper represents a fundamental shift in our relationship with information, outsourcing memory from our brains to books and now to the digital cloud. Yet, its rediscovery in our own era speaks to a growing awareness that our native cognitive abilities are a technology in themselves, one that can be trained, optimized, and harnessed to its full potential. The Memory Palace challenges the very notion of a bad memory, suggesting instead that we all possess the innate hardware for incredible feats of recall. We simply need to learn the ancient operating system. This exploration of maximizing the mind's natural capacity leads us to a legend that promised to maximize the body's potential as well, through a substance that could confer the ultimate physical advantage. Imagine for a moment you are an ancient Greek statesman about to deliver a crucial 3-hour speech to the Senate. There are no teleprompters, no note cards, not even a reliable scroll to glance at. Your only tool is your mind. This was the daunting reality for orators, scholars, and lawyers in the classical world, and it was from this immense pressure that one of history's most powerful cognitive technologies was born: the Memory Palace. This legendary technique, also known as the method of loci, didn't rely on magic or mystery, but on a brilliant and systematic understanding of how the human brain is wired to remember. Its origin story is as dramatic as it is tragic, attributed to the poet Simonides of Chios, who was attending a grand banquet. According to the legend, the hall suddenly collapsed, crushing the guests beyond recognition. Simonides, the sole survivor, found he could identify each mangled body by recalling the exact spot where every person had been sitting around the table. This horrific event revealed a profound neurological truth to him: that memory is profoundly spatial and emotional. To remember something with perfect clarity, you simply place a vivid mental image representing that information into a specific location within a familiar space in your mind. To recall it later, you just take a mental walk through that space, retrieving the images you left behind. This mental technology was meticulously refined and passed down through generations, finding its most complete instruction manual in the Roman text Rhetorica ad Hernium. This wasn't a vague philosophical treatise, it was a practical field guide. It advised orators to choose a real, well-known location as their palace, a spacious building, a public walkway, or even the rooms of their own home. The key was to have a clear, sequential path through this mental space. Then, for each piece of information they needed to remember, they were to create a strikingly vivid, often bizarre or shocking image and place it at a specific locus or point along the path. For instance, to remember a point about a legal case involving a shipwreck and inheritance, One might imagine a massive ship crashing through the wall of their mental courtyard, with sailors tossing gold coins to a waiting heir. The more outrageous and emotionally charged the image, the more firmly it would stick. This process forced a deep, creative engagement with the material, transforming dry facts into an unforgettable mental movie. While the memory palaces themselves were ephemeral, the artifacts of this practice are the texts and even the architecture that supported it. The Rhetorica ad Hirnium itself is a priceless artifact, a surviving blueprint for a lost mental art. Beyond scrolls, we can see the principles of the method of Los etched into the stone of the ancient world. The design of great Gothic cathedrals centuries later, with their distinct chapels, statues, and stained glass windows, each telling a specific biblical story, functioned as a physical memory palace for an illiterate congregation. Worshippers could walk through the nave and be guided through the key narratives of their faith. This shows that the technology wasn't just internal. It could be projected outward, using physical space as a scaffold for collective memory and learning, a tool for preserving and transmitting culture long before the printing press. What is truly astonishing about this ancient legend is how perfectly it predicts the findings of modern neuroscience. We now know that our ability to navigate space and our ability to form memories are deeply intertwined in the same brain region, the hippocampus. The method of Los is so effective because it cleverly hijacks our brain's powerful, primal navigation system for the purpose of storing abstract information. When a memory athlete today memorizes the exact order of 10 shuffled decks of cards in an hour, they are not using a secret drug or superpower. They are using Simonide's 2,000-year-old technique. Functional MRI scans show that during these feats, their brains light up not just in memory centers, but in spatial navigation centers as well. They are quite literally taking a walk through their mind. This ancient mental software remains the most powerful mnemonic system ever discovered, a testament to the Greeks' incredible insight into the human mind's operating system. The story of the memory palace is ultimately a story about the very nature of knowledge itself. It represents a peak of internalized information, a time when the human mind was the primary library. Its gradual fade from common use, as writing became more accessible and information could be stored externally, marks a fundamental shift in our cognitive evolution. We outsourced memory first to books and now to the digital cloud, but the legend's recent resurgence, championed by cognitive scientists and memory champions, reminds us that our own native mental abilities are a form of technology, one that we can choose to hone and master. It challenges the modern idea of a bad memory, suggesting instead that we all possess the innate hardware for incredible recall. We simply need to learn how to use it. This exploration of maximizing the mind's natural potential through disciplined practice now leads us to consider a legend that promised to maximize the body's potential through a far more direct and tantalizing means, a legendary substance that could confer the ultimate physical advantage. Now let's turn our attention from the disciplined art of memory to a far more tantalizing legend, one that promised not just mental mastery, but physical perfection and eternal youth. In the shimmering halls of Mount Olympus, the gods of ancient Greece sustained their divine power not through mere chance, but by consuming two miraculous substances, ambrosia and nectar. These were not ordinary food and drink. They were the very source of immortality, the elixirs that maintained their eternal strength, beauty, and vitality, setting them irrevocably apart from mortal humans. Homer, in his epic verses, describes how these divine provisions were carried by doves to the high reaches of the mountain, a poetic image that underscores their otherworldly nature. For the gods, ambrosia and nectar were the ultimate sustainers of life, but for mortals who dared to taste them, The consequences were transformative, sometimes granting incredible power, other times leading to tragedy, as the human body was not meant to handle such potent divinity. This stark division between mortal and immortal based on diet speaks to a deep, ancient fascination with the idea that what we consume could fundamentally alter our very being. When we look past the divine packaging, these legends invite a fascinating question. Could the myth of Ambrosia and Nectar be a symbolic representation of very real and very advanced ancient knowledge of nutrition and biochemistry? One compelling theory suggests these substances were metaphors for highly nutritious or psychoactive foods discovered by early societies. Ambrosia, often described as a food, might have been based on a potent combination of honey, fermented grains, and rare herbs known for their preservative and health-giving properties. Honey itself, with its natural antibacterial qualities and ability to last for centuries, would have seemed magical. Nectar, portrayed as a drink, could symbolize an early form of an energy-rich or medicinal beverage, perhaps a specially prepared wine infused with herbs like thyme or oregano, or even a primitive tonic made from fermented fruits and plants with stimulating effects. Another, more speculative idea points to the possibility of ancient superfoods now lost to history, plants or fungi that contained unique alkaloids or nutrients that significantly enhanced vitality or cognitive function, but which were overharvested or grew only in specific, isolated locations, making them the stuff of legend. The potential artifacts that could support this idea are not labeled jars of ambrosia, but the intricate vessels and textual recipes left behind. Archaeologists have unearthed beautiful, specialized pottery from the Minoan and Mycenaean civilizations, elaborate cups, mixing bowls, and storage jars that seem designed for ceremonial consumption. The presence of residues of honey, wine, and exotic plant compounds in these vessels suggests they were used for preparing and serving substances far more significant than ordinary meals. Furthermore, ancient texts provide intriguing clues. While not a recipe book, Homer's detailed descriptions of feasting and sacrifice hint at a culture deeply aware of the connection between food, ceremony, and power. Later, the writings of Greek physicians like Hippocrates and Galen delve into the medicinal properties of foods and herbs, formalizing this ancient, intuitive understanding into an early system of nutritional science. These artifacts and texts collectively paint a picture of a society that was actively experimenting with diet as a technology for enhancing health, longevity, and even spiritual experience. The most enduring legacy of the Ambrosia and Nectar myth is how it perfectly captures the timeless human quest to optimize our biology through what we consume. This is not an ancient superstition, it is a pursuit that defines our modern world. Today, we don't call it nectar, we call it nutritional science, superfoods, or nutraceuticals. The ancient desire to find a food that grants strength and longevity is alive and well in our obsession with antioxidants, adaptogenic herbs, and microbiome health. The legendary promise of ambrosia finds its echo in modern research into calorie restriction and its potential to extend lifespan, or in the development of functional foods designed to deliver specific health benefits beyond basic nutrition. The myth reminds us that the line between food and medicine has always been blurred, and that the dream of a perfect diet, one that unlocks our fullest potential, is a driving force that has connected shamans, alchemists, and scientists across the millennia. It represents the hope that vitality is not just a gift of the gods, but something we can cultivate through knowledge and choice. This deep connection between consumption and power, between the kitchen and the temple, shows that some of humanity's most advanced technologies have always been those that nourish and sustain the vessel of life itself. Now let's journey from the profound ethical questions of creating life to one of history's most iconic tales of deception, the legendary Trojan Horse. This story, immortalized in Homer's Iliad and Virgil's Aeneid, is so much more than a simple trick. It represents a breathtakingly sophisticated fusion of psychological manipulation, engineering prowess, and theatrical misdirection. After a grueling 10-year siege that had cost countless lives and achieved nothing, the Greek army outside the walls of Troy appeared to simply vanish, leaving behind only a massive, beautifully crafted wooden horse and a single, clever storyteller named Sinon. His tale was a masterclass in narrative warfare. He convinced the Trojans that the horse was an offering to the goddess Athena, constructed as an apology for desecrating her temple, and that it was deliberately built too large to fit through their gates because the Greeks feared the Trojans would take it inside and win her favor. This was a lie engineered to appeal to Trojan pride, religious belief, and their desire for a final, decisive victory. The horse wasn't just a container for soldiers, it was the delivery mechanism for a perfectly crafted story, a Trojan story in its own right, designed to bypass the city's physical defenses by exploiting the overconfidence and hope of the people within. While the story of a giant horse is almost certainly a poetic invention, it almost certainly reflects a very real and common ancient military tactic: the use of deception and stealth to overcome impregnable fortifications. Throughout history, besieging armies have always sought ways to get soldiers inside a city without having to breach its walls directly. The legend of the Trojan horse is likely a mythologized version of these clever ruses. One compelling theory suggests the horse might have been a metaphor for a massive, wheeled siege engine, perhaps covered in damp horsehides to protect it from fire arrows, that was used to batter down a gate or a weakened section of the wall. Once it had done its job, Greek soldiers would have poured out from within its structure. Another possibility is that the story encodes the memory of a real infiltration using a hidden tunnel or a secret entrance, with the horse serving as a symbolic representation of the cunning required. There are also accounts of ancient armies using similar tricks, such as the Assyrians hiding soldiers inside large merchant carts to gain entry to a city. The genius of the Trojan horse legend is that it condenses all these potential strategies into a single, unforgettable image of deceptive ingenuity. The most fascinating artifacts connected to this legend aren't physical remains of a giant horse, but the countless artistic and cultural depictions that have kept the story alive for millennia. Ancient Greek pottery is filled with scenes of the horse, often shown on wheels with little windows revealing the faces of hidden warriors, proving that the tale was a popular and powerful part of their cultural identity. Later, Roman authors like Virgil expanded the narrative, adding the tragic layer of the Trojan priest Laocoon, who famously warned, "I fear the Greeks, even those bearing gifts," before he and his sons were killed by sea serpents, a divine sign that silenced all further opposition. This addition deepened the psychological drama, turning the story into a timeless lesson about the dangers of ignoring wise counsel and the seductive power of a gift that hides a terrible cost. These artistic representations are the real artifacts. They show how the concept of strategic deception was valued, celebrated, and passed down as a crucial aspect of military wisdom. Ultimately, the enduring power of the Trojan horse lies in its profound message about the nature of technology and conflict. It reminds us that the most advanced technology is not always the sharpest sword or the strongest wall, but often the most clever idea. Victory doesn't always go to the strongest army, but to the one that can outthink its opponent, that can weaponize perception and narrative. The horse symbolizes the concept of the unexpected vector, an attack that comes from a direction the enemy isn't watching. In our modern world, we see the direct descendants of the Trojan horse everywhere. In cybersecurity, a Trojan is a type of malware that disguises itself as a harmless file to gain access to a system, mirroring the ancient story with digital precision. In espionage, deep cover agents live fabricated lives for years to gain trust and access. Even in marketing and politics, the strategic framing of a message to bypass critical thinking and appeal directly to emotion is a form of psychological deployment. The legend challenges us to look beyond the obvious, to understand that the battlefield is often in the mind, and that the most effective weapon is sometimes a well-told story that carries a hidden payload. This exploration of cunning and strategic deception now leads us to a legend that explores the opposite impulse, not to deceive or destroy, but to use knowledge in the ultimate act of creation. Now we arrive at a legend that stands as a profound and cautionary mirror to our own technological ambitions, the Golem of Jewish lore. This is not a tale of gods on a distant mountain, but of humans in a dusty study, using sacred knowledge to cross the ultimate threshold and become creators of life itself. The most famous narrative comes from 16th century Prague, where the great Rabbi Judah Loew ben Bezalel, a revered scholar and mystic, is said to have fashioned a giant figure from the clay of the riverbank. Following a precise ritual rooted in the mystical teachings of the Kabbalah, he and his assistants then breathed life into this inert form by inscribing the Hebrew word emet, meaning truth, upon its forehead. The golem, now animated, was a powerful but mindless servant, an automaton of immense strength tasked with the grim but vital duty of protecting the city's Jewish community from violent pogroms and blood libel accusations. It was the ultimate defensive technology, a guardian born not of metal and gears, but of earth and holy word. This act of creation was deeply intertwined with a specific and powerful form of Jewish mysticism. The animation of the golem wasn't presented as an act of mere spellcasting, but as a highly disciplined technological process based on a sacred understanding of the divine architecture of reality. Kabbalistic tradition holds that God created the universe through speech, through the letters of the Hebrew alphabet which contain divine energy. The ritual to create a golem was in essence an attempt to replicate this creative process on a smaller scale, a daring human endeavor to harness the same primordial power that structured existence. It required not just knowledge of the correct combinations of letters and names of God, but also immense spiritual purity, specific astrological alignments, and a state of deep meditative concentration. This frames the golem not as a product of superstition, but as the result of applying a sophisticated, albeit esoteric, theoretical system, a metaphysical technology every bit as complex and rules-based as programming a modern computer. The word emet was its source code, and its eventual deactivation was a form of program termination. The story never ends with the successful creation of the golem, however. Its power is always its undoing. In the most common version of the tale, the golem, lacking a soul and true consciousness, begins to follow its orders with a terrifying and destructive literalism. Tasked with protecting the community, it grows increasingly violent and uncontrollable, eventually threatening the very people it was built to save. The turning point comes when the rabbi is forced to deactivate his creation. He does so by erasing the first letter of emet from its forehead. The word becomes met, which means dead, and the lifeless clay collapses back into an inert heap. This crucial part of the legend is its ethical heart. It serves as a powerful warning about the inherent danger of creating a powerful intelligence that you cannot fully control, and the profound responsibility that falls upon the creator for the actions of their creation. The golem's strength is not its own. It is a borrowed divine force that, without the guiding hand of wisdom, becomes a mindless and rampaging power. While we will never find the physical remains of Rabbi Loew's golem in an attic in Prague, the legend has left a deep and tangible mark on the world. The most compelling artifacts are the ancient texts themselves. Sefer Yetzirah, or the Book of Creation, is an early Jewish mystical text that explores the creative power of the Hebrew letters and numbers, laying the philosophical groundwork for the Golem legend. Later Kabbalistic manuscripts contain intricate diagrams and explicit instructions for the creation process, treating it as a serious, if extremely dangerous, spiritual exercise. Beyond texts, the legend has been depicted in countless works of art, from expressionist paintings to early silent films, each interpretation grappling with the theme of the uncontrollable automaton. The attic of the Old New Synagogue in Prague, where the golem's remains were said to be stored, has become a place of pilgrimage and potent symbolism, a physical location that anchors this powerful story in a real-world setting. The immense power of the golem myth today lies in its stunning prescience as a parable for our own age of artificial intelligence and robotics. The story of Rabbi Lo is, in a very real sense, the story of every AI engineer and roboticist. We are the modern Kabbalists, using the arcane languages of code and algorithms instead of Hebrew letters to animate our own creations, granting them a form of life and agency. The golem's mindless obedience and destructive potential directly parallel our current ethical struggles with autonomous weapons systems and the problem of value alignment in artificial intelligence. How do we ensure a powerful AI understands and shares our human values and goals? The legend forces us to ask the most critical question: do we possess the wisdom, the foresight, and the ethical frameworks to control the powerful forces we are now summoning into existence? Just as the rabbi had a failsafe, the ability to erase the first letter, it challenges us to build our own ethical and practical off switches into the technologies we create. The golem is no longer just a Jewish folktale. It is a global cultural lens through which we examine the exhilarating and terrifying responsibilities of playing God in a digital age. After exploring the creation of artificial life and the profound ethical questions it raises, we arrive at a legend that turns our focus outward to the very act of seeing itself, the Myth of Lynceus. In the rich tapestry of Greek mythology, Lynceus stands apart not for his strength or his cunning, but for his unparalleled vision. He was one of the Argonauts who sailed with Jason in quest of the Golden Fleece, and his gift was nothing short of supernatural. His eyesight was so preternaturally sharp that he could see through solid objects, discerning what was hidden deep within the earth or behind castle walls. He could spot a coin lost on the ocean floor from the deck of a ship and track the movement of enemies leagues away across mountainous terrain. This was more than just good eyesight. It was presented as a form of clairvoyance, a sensory power that transcended all natural limits, making him the ultimate scout and a living, breathing surveillance system long before the concept even existed. When we move beyond the magical description, the legend of Lynceus invites us to consider the very real and sophisticated practices of observation that ancient cultures had mastered. His ability to see through the earth could be a poetic metaphor for the skill of master miners or prospectors who learned to read the subtle clues of the landscape, the color of the soil, the types of vegetation, the flow of water, to locate veins of metal ore or sources of water hidden deep underground. His long-distance vision might reflect the expertise of royal lookouts or shepherds who spent their lives scanning vast horizons, trained to detect the faintest plume of dust from an approaching army or a single stray sheep miles away. These individuals developed an incredible visual acuity through a lifetime of practice, a skill so advanced to the average person that it could only be explained as a divine gift. The legend encodes this deep, empirical knowledge of the natural world, celebrating the human capacity to train and enhance our natural senses to an almost miraculous degree. The most tantalizing connection, however, lies in the possibility of early optical technology. Could the story of Lynceus be a mythological echo of the very first experiments with lenses? We know that the ancient world was fascinated by the properties of glass and crystal. The Nimrod lens, a 3,000-year-old piece of rock crystal unearthed in Assyria, is a famous example. Ground into an oval shape, it could magnify small objects when held at a certain distance, though whether it was used as a magnifying glass, a burning lens to start fires, or simply a decorative inlay is still debated by archaeologists. Similarly, there are accounts from the Roman writer Seneca of using a glass globe filled with water to magnify text. While these objects were crude by modern standards, their very existence proves that ancient peoples were actively experimenting with materials that could bend and focus light. The legend of a man who could see incredible distances might have been inspired by the awe-inspiring effect of looking through a primitive lens for the very first time, an experience that would have felt truly magical. This ancient desire to see further and clearer is a drive that has never left us. It is the unbroken thread that connects the myth of Lynceus to the groundbreaking work of figures like Galileo Galilei. When Galileo first pointed his refined telescope toward the heavens in 1609, he was enacting the promise of the Lynceus myth on a cosmic scale. He saw the moons of Jupiter, the craters on our own moon, and the myriad stars of the Milky Way, details hidden to every human who had ever lived before him. He had, in a very real sense, been granted the eyes of Lynceus. This technological leap didn't just advance astronomy, it fundamentally reshaped our understanding of humanity's place in the universe, proving that the cosmos was far vaster and more complex than previously imagined. From that moment on, every telescope, every microscope, every endoscope, and every camera lens has been a continuation of this quest, each one granting us a new way to see the previously unseen. Today, this legendary pursuit has evolved beyond simply extending our natural vision to creating entirely new ways of perceiving reality. We have developed technologies that would seem like pure sorcery to the ancient Greeks. Magnetic resonance imaging machines and X-rays allow us to literally see through flesh and bone, diagnosing disease without making a single incision, fulfilling Lynceus's power to see through solid matter. Satellite cameras in orbit can read a license plate from space, providing a god's eye view of the entire planet. Thermal imaging cameras reveal the heat signatures of living things in total darkness, and neutrino detectors peer into the heart of the sun itself. We are no longer limited to the narrow slice of the electromagnetic spectrum that our eyes can perceive. We have built electronic eyes that can see in infrared, ultraviolet, radio waves, and beyond, painting a picture of reality that is infinitely richer and more complex than our biology alone could ever allow. The story of Lynceus, therefore, is far more than a quirky tale from mythology. It is a powerful and enduring symbol of humanity's deepest and most persistent technological instinct, the desire to overcome our biological limitations and expand the horizon of our perception. It represents the understanding that knowledge is inextricably linked to vision. To see something is to begin to understand it. From the first time a human picked up a piece of curved crystal and watched a tiny insect magnify before their eyes, to the moment the James Webb Space Telescope sent back its first deep-field image, we have been on a collective journey to see more. The eyes of Lynceus challenge us to keep looking, to keep building better lenses, not just for our telescopes and microscopes, but for our minds, forever striving to see the world and ourselves with ever greater clarity. What emerges from this grand tapestry of legends is a fascinating portrait of a shared human psyche, one that consistently dreams in the language of transformation. Whether it was turning base lead into gold, a lump of clay into a living servant, or a simple crystal into a navigational guide, our ancestors were fundamentally preoccupied with the idea of change, of altering the state of matter, the boundaries of life, and the very limits of perception. This isn't just a collection of random fantasies, it's a coherent, cross-cultural exploration of possibilities. The alchemist at his furnace seeking the philosopher's stone, the Kabbalist inscribing life onto a golem, and the Viking navigator reading polarized light in a sunstone were all engaged in the same essential project, using a combination of observed natural principles and creative ingenuity to actively reshape their world. They may have explained their successes through the lens of divine intervention or mystical incantation, but the underlying impulse was a form of proto-science, a drive to manipulate the building blocks of reality to achieve a desired outcome, an impulse that finds its direct descendants in our modern laboratories working on genetic engineering, nuclear fusion, and quantum computing. This deep dive also reveals a world where the hard line we draw today between science and spirituality simply did not exist. For the ancient mind, these domains were fluid and interconnected. The precise astronomical calculations of the Antikythera Mechanism were not separate from the divine order of the cosmos. They were a way to understand and honor it. The intricate rituals for creating a homunculus in a flask were as much a spiritual purification of the alchemist as they were a chemical procedure. This blending suggests that our predecessors understood knowledge as a holistic pursuit. To know how the world worked was to also understand humanity's place within it, a concept that modern specialization has often lost. The legends remind us that innovation doesn't have to be a cold, purely rational process. It can be, and perhaps at its best is, driven by a sense of wonder, a search for meaning, and a reverence for the mysteries that still lie beyond our full comprehension. The most powerful technologies are those that speak to both our rational minds and our spiritual yearning. Furthermore, these stories function as an incredibly durable and sophisticated knowledge preservation system. In an age before peer-reviewed journals or digital databases, how does a culture safeguard a complex idea for centuries? It weaves it into a compelling narrative. The detailed, albeit cryptic, recipes for Greek fire or the precise instructions for building a flying machine in the Vimanas Shastra were embedded within epic poems and religious texts, ensuring they were copied, recited, and remembered by generation after generation. The story itself became the vessel, protecting the kernel of the idea, the formula, the blueprint, the principle within the protective shell of myth. This is why the interdisciplinary approach is so crucial. An archaeologist might dismiss a text as mere folklore, while a folklorist might overlook the material evidence that gives the story weight. It is only when we combine the shovel with the scroll, the spectrometer with the saga, that we can begin to decode these messages from the past. The artifact gives the legend a body, and the legend gives the artifact a soul. Ultimately, this synthesis invites a profound shift in perspective on our own technological moment. We often view history as a linear march of progress, with our current era representing the pinnacle of achievement, but these legends challenge that arrogance. They suggest that the drive to innovate is a constant, cyclical force in human history, and that our modern wonders, our artificial intelligence, our genetic therapies, our renewable energy systems, are simply the latest expressions of age-old dreams. The smartphone in your pocket, with its ability to connect you to the sum of human knowledge and to people across the globe, is a functional realization of the scrying mirror and Solomon's flying throne. The terrifying power we wield in nuclear arsenals is the sobering, real-world incarnation of the Brahmastra's destructive potential. This realization is humbling. It means we are not so unique in our ambitions, and it begs a critical question our ancestors could only answer through parable and warning. Will we use our own transformative powers with wisdom? The patterns in these myths provide a timeless ethical framework, reminding us that the true measure of a technology is not its brilliance, but the wisdom with which it is wielded, and the legacy of care or catastrophe it leaves behind for the generations who will one day tell our story. We have journeyed together through a gallery of human dreams, from the unquenchable flames of Greek fire to the living clay of the Golem. These 31 legends are far more than just entertaining stories. They are a profound testament to the unbroken thread of human ambition. They show us that our drive to innovate, to reach beyond our grasp, and to imagine the impossible is not a modern phenomenon but a fundamental part of who we have always been. These narratives challenge the very timeline of progress we so often take for granted, suggesting that history is not a simple, straight line but a rich tapestry woven with threads of forgotten knowledge and astounding ingenuity. They remind us that the past is not a closed book but an ongoing conversation, filled with mysteries that continue to whisper to us, urging us to look closer and question deeper. The true power of these tales lies in their ability to inspire. They are a catalyst for curiosity, a spark that ignites our own desire to explore and understand. As we close this chapter, let that sense of wonder remain with you. Let it fuel your own quest for knowledge, whether you are a scientist in a lab, a student in a library, or simply someone who looks up at the night sky and wonders what else is possible. These legends belong to all of us. They are our shared inheritance of imagination. I want to extend my deepest thanks to you for spending this time exploring these enigmas with me. If these stories resonated with you, if they made you see the past in a new light, please let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear which of these legendary technologies captured your imagination the most. And if you want to join me as we continue to question and explore the countless other mysteries of our world, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Until our next adventure together, never stop asking questions and never stop seeking the extraordinary hidden within.